Okay, well, welcome to a long-awaited episode of Investigate Everything, at least long-awaited by my employer who's sitting in the other room right now. We've had a lot of things going on, and so I do apologize for not having an episode for a while. But to be quite honest with you, as much as I want to keep a regular schedule, we investigate everything, but we investigate it well. And that's so important than just putting out content for the sake of putting out content. So I hope you can bear with me on that because that's just how I roll, and I hope you're good with it. Today we are going to talk about war with China. They say it's going to happen. I say it's happening. I think my guest would agree with me. And the point of tonight's episode is to zoom in and zoom out. So hopefully you see what we see if you're not seeing it already. So let me just talk us through some of the events recently. Drones used by China, by Russia, and Ukraine are made by CCP-controlled drone maker DJI. The attack that happened in Russia was launched, a bunch of drones launched from the back of a semi-trailer truck with a container. About 1 to 5 miles away is the range. And it was executed with a massive swarm of drones. Containers coming into the U.S., the same type of containers that go on the back of semi-trailer trucks, are rarely searched because we just don't have enough people at the ports to search the massive amounts of containers. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of containers in a month. If you've ever been to the port of Los Angeles or the port of Elizabeth in New Jersey, any major port, you're going to see a sea of containers. But even if there were enough inspectors, we got another problem. 80 to 90% of the cranes that lift those containers off of the ships and then put them on the back of rail or trucks are contracted and deployed by a company called ZPMC, which is a wholly owned Chinese Communist Party company. Okay, and that is in most of our ports, and we've covered this on previous episodes. That's okay, though, because rail's pretty secure, right? Think again. See, the CCP, they think of everything. They think of everything, and they think long-term. One of the largest, at least commuter rail providers, but they provide all sorts of rail, is a company called CRRC. Now, you may remember back in 2021, I was very curious about this because when I see potential plans by the Chinese Communist Party and how they attack the United States and the West in general, what I look for is I try to get to thinking the way they think. This is something we learned when I was a lowly intelligence analyst, 18 years old, learning how to be an intelligence analyst at Goodfellow Air Force Base and Fort Huachuca in Arizona when I was with military intelligence. But the first lesson they teach you is never mirror image. Don't think they think like you. Try to figure out how to think like them. So how does the Chinese Communist Party think? Well, they think long term, first of all. Their goal is 2049 to be the global hegemon. They can only do that with us out of the way. Okay, some people think we're competition and all that. No, this is war. Why is it war? Does it look like war? There's no boots on the ground. We don't have a Red Dawn moment. There's no parachutes coming down. Well, because see, the Chinese, they don't look at war the same way we do. We look at the hardware of war, their words. The hardware is the uniforms, the boots, the weapons, the tanks, the Red Dawn moment where you can clearly define the enemy. They don't care about that. They care about the software of war. What is the software of war? The purpose. They don't care how they accomplish the goal. They're just going to use whatever happens and whatever they have at hand. Why do they do this? Because they realized long ago that they could not beat the United States in a kinetic war. 1999, these one general and military advisor, they came up with I would say a manifesto. Brandon probably has a better word for it than I. Not exactly a doctrine, but they came up with this new essay, this new idea of how to fight wars called unrestricted warfare. This was either leaked on purpose or got spirited out of China. You can buy it on Amazon. It's called unrestricted warfare. This is their way of fighting wars because kinetically, They probably can't beat us. But that's okay, because what's the goal? The goal is to be the global hegemon by 2049. The software of war, the purpose. So what unrestricted warfare changes is how to look at war. Okay, and as I say, the war god has changed his face. So the first rule of unrestricted warfare is everyone's an enemy combatant. The second rule is everything is a battlefield. The boardroom, the schools, society, the courtroom, you name it. They don't care, because the goal, again, always keep your eye on the goal. 2049. We're gone. They're in charge of everything. Don't forget, it's called the Middle Kingdom because it's not like some Asgardian thing where, like Middle Earth or anything like that. No, like Midgard. It's because the Middle Kingdom, the way that actually translates, is the center of the world. Okay, so back to what we're talking about. So as we're looking at many, many things happening, we just talked about rail trucks. We talked about drones deploying from the back of containers, which is wild. If we have time, we'll play some of that video of the drone, reanimation of the drone attack on the strategic Russian airbase. Okay. But if you look at what China is doing, they have systematically taken over our key infrastructure, our key personnel, our key judges, our key some important politicians, and a few key politicians. Our ports are almost completely controlled by the CCP in terms of logistics and the mechanics around how things move in and out of those ports. Look at our Boston, the MTA, Massachusetts Transportation Authority. CRC makes all the cars. Same thing with Chicago. Same thing with the BART. Okay. What else happens? Well, everything runs on semiconductors. That's why Taiwan's so important. They make 80 to 90% of the semiconductor wafers, the raw boards for the world, and no one's been able to replicate the process. They take that, guess what? You better get a new refrigerator the minute that war starts, because that invasion starts, because you won't be able to get one. They'll decide if you get one. So back to CRC, they make rail cars for California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, many other cities. That's terrifying. Think about it. Hello, social credit system, or worse. How about just massive derailments? And then let's think back between 2020 and now. We've seen massive violent protests by groups such as BLM, Antifa, pro-Palestinian activists, and more. All of these events were organized by pro-China, if not controlled by China, neo-Marxists here in the United States, useful idiots, and managed mainly through repurposed CRMs like Action Network and Open Collective. What's a CRM? This, basically customer readiness management. Hopefully I got that acronym right, but you know the point. Basically Salesforce, where you enter in all the contacts, and then you could have plugins to reach out for sales and everything. So here's how it works. You could sit at a cubicle and with a credit card get a $99 subscription for the premium, and you can even get protesters and launch them in every city. That's better than artillery, because look at the conditions of our cities after those violent, mostly peaceful protests. It's better than artillery. People are left confused. Property damage is through the roof. And you can do it, and there are no background checks. You just set it up. You can send your signs to the local Kinkos. You can send people to the protest via plugins by Lyft and Uber. It's better than artillery. And then there's more. We have, in 2020, we had a rash of these mysterious Chinese seeds showing up. I don't know where that story went, and it suddenly disappeared. It got debunked, if you recall. Maybe Brandon has some insight on that. But then just 2 days ago, 2 researchers at the University of Michigan, yes, Whitmer's Michigan, the kidnap victim, they were caught smuggling in this dangerous fungus that can cause mass crop fatalities as well as human fatalities or severe illness. Severe illness. And if you go through the FBI webpage currently, There are so many. I've got some of them. There's so many arrests of Chinese Communist Party members involved in hacking, involved in there's a stalking charge by two guys who were also stealing military tech. And these things are happening. And now think about this. We're catching, there's so many of them on the FBI homepage because it seems like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are actually doing something. But think of the 4 years, if not more, where nothing was done. Okay, so then what about command and control? Let's say all this is happening, right? Let's say this is war. You believe me. I know I'm right. Doesn't matter. War's war. It'll find you anyways, whether you think I'm right or wrong. How do you control all that? Well, that's easy. See, in war, you've got to control people. You got to control prisoners. How do you do that? You do that with the military police. In war, that's their role, is to basically secure the base, but also secure the local population. Isn't it funny that we've had so many busts and exposés and arrests of actual Chinese Communist Party controlled police stations in our major cities? Not to mention the many tens of thousands of Chinese nationals, military, very military looking, as you've seen in my previous show with J.J. Carroll called Unrestricted Invasion. Tens of thousands have come through and are still unaccounted for. Many of them look like military. And by the way, in 2021, there were massive, not disappearances, but police in many, many of the provinces in China seemed to just kind of disappear right around the time that Biden opened up the border. Okay, that's your, crowd control and everything like that, but command and control. Now you got to get some more senior people. Well, they're already here. They come in in business suits. There's one of the major covert, in my opinion, one of the major covert influence and propagandists and access agents in this country. Also owns the Brooklyn Nets and many, many more things. Okay, we move on. Well, here's the thing. If you go back to 2014 even, because you need intelligence in war, right? That's okay, because you got Operation Fox Hunt. See, Obama knew about this in 2014. What's Operation Fox Hunt? See, that's the Chinese Communist Party currently operating in this country where they kidnap dissidents who are, if they're not U.S. citizens, they are U.S. persons who are protected under Executive Order 12333. U.S. persons different than citizens, but they do have some rights. They're usually refugees, things like that. Okay, U.S. persons. And they just kidnap them. They kidnap them and they spirit them away, and they end up in a Chinese court because they've been accused of financial crimes and grift against the Chinese Communist Party. Now, Obama, he was pretty stern. He looked at Xi while they're at the Poynter Institute, which, by the way, happens to be where all the fact checkers come from. And he said, Xi, gotta stop doing that. You can't do that anymore. He said, okay. And he kept doing it. Only Trump was the one that arrested some of them. And this is not a conspiracy theory, because if you go to China or you just look at some Chinese websites, they have action movies and, TV series called Operation Fox Hunt where they are celebrating this activity. If you ever saw Munich, it's much like what Golda Meir was doing to hunt down Black September after the 1972 Munich massacre, where she sent Israelis, covert Israeli operators into all throughout Europe to basically violate sovereignty of countries, kidnap these Black September members who carried out the massacre or planned it, and drag them back to Israel. They also did this with the Nazis as well. Okay, so we talked about the police stations. We talked about Operation Fox Hunt. That's happening now. Now, to his credit, I will say Donald Trump's DOJ seems to be doing a lot of work. I'm seeing a lot of arrests. I'm seeing a lot of cases. They're prosecuting cases that were just left to collect dust by previous administrations. So what does this all mean? Okay. What does this all mean? Well, it means that war is coming, or it's already in full swing. The attacker is China. The targets are most Western countries, And the USA is at the top of that list because the China dream of 2049 of being the global hegemon, where all flowers lean towards the sun, cannot be achieved with us in the way. They want our land, they want our resources, but they don't want us, and we have to go. And it's in full swing now, and I think it's becoming more obvious. It seems almost to be ramping up. We'll get into the way China is systematically surrounding Taiwan right now, South Korean elections, Philippine Islands, literally that they're just claiming are theirs. It's happening now. Okay, so why are we talking about this? What can you do about it? Well, you could do a lot, because remember, you could have big strategic plans, but you need boots on the ground to make it happen. And understanding how the Chinese conduct war at the boardroom, at the school board, mainly at the Chamber of Commerce is where they love to get entry into communities. You can start recognizing these things. Or if you see a semi-trailer truck, parked in the trees for about, 4 or 5 days outside a strategic location, you might want to call that one in. So look, I can ramble on, but the thing is, remember, it's real, it's acute, and it's here. And that thing is war. All right. I'm going to bring Brandon Weichert onto the stage. Brandon, I will let you go through your bio. I've gone through it many times. Brandon is a regular. Let me get you on the stage. Sorry, bud. I'm out of practice. There we go. I'm out of practice. Brandon, welcome. Thank you for coming on at short notice. I appreciate it. Sorry I made you wait. I was trying to get you a great cold open. Brandon is.
It was great. It was a great setup.
Oh, thanks. See, and Brandon is, a very good friend of mine. We met, online. I heard him on Steve Bannon talking about his book, Biohacked: China's Race to Control Life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's what's amazing about Brandon, it's not just like China. It's not just like Ukraine. He writes books about Ukraine, about space warfare. I won't tell them what the book you're working on, but it's like this guy is full spectrum dominance when it comes to everything about war and everything about geopolitics. So, and he's much more than that. Tell us a little bit about the crowd, a little bit about yourself, Brandon, and let's just jump right into what's going on.
Sure thing. Well, I'm going to keep it short because I was on a podcast, one of those financial bro podcasts. And the guy before we started recording, he said, "Look, we don't know anything about you. We do finance stuff. We don't know. Why don't you just spend 5 minutes walking us through your career?" And I did. And when they posted it, every single comment was hating on me for talking about myself for 5 minutes. And I was like, they told me to. I was like, what are you kidding me?
Haters are gonna hate, man.
That's right. So just real quick, I'm wearing my "Make Space Great Again."
I love it.
In honor of Trump's Golden Dome. It's going to be huge. About myself, I'm the senior national security editor at the National Interest, which is a point of pride. It was a think tank, the Center for National Interest, which still exists today, started by Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon. After Nixon obviously was out of the presidency, they started this think tank. And it was really the first do tank, because Nixon said he hated think tanks and he wanted, if he was going to get behind something, he wanted it to actually do something. And so,
right. Did he call it a do tank?
Well, that was sort of his nickname for it, but now everybody in DC says they're a do tank, and now I can't, because all the DC dweebs, I can't associate with them.
They're all, they all, most of them can't tell you what they do for a living either.
Well, they don't know what they do for a living. This is part of the problem. So I'm right there. I'm also a occasional contributor at Popular Mechanics for Hearst Publications, and I also am I'm a producer and sort of a resident geopolitical pundit for Mike Lindell's new TV network, which is going great. I've written 4 books: A Disaster of Our Own Making, How the West Lost Ukraine, Biohacked: China's Race to Control Life, which is how you and probably your audience knows me the most, The Shadow War: Iran's Quest for Supremacy, which actually predicted the 10/7 attacks a year and a half before they.
Which is an amazingly deep dive. I mean, I was really impressed with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I did a lot of work. The Middle East, I spent a lot of time in. When I worked in the government, I spent on that portfolio, unfortunately. And then, of course, winning space, how America remains a superpower. And before that, as I noted, I was a congressional staffer for the fighting 3rd District of Florida, and which is Gainesville, Stark, Florida area for Ted Yoho. And I have a master's degree as well from the Institute of World Politics, and I also spent a little bit of time at Oxford.
That's right, I forgot.
Yeah. So I was studying under Dr. Richard Coggins at Oriel College. So,
funny story about Oxford. I also went to Oxford,
yes,
as a +1, and so my wife was finishing up her work there with a like 20-year gap. And, so she was an extraordinary fellow at the time. So I got to sit in the senior common room over there at New College. And I don't.
Goddamn bloody maudlin.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I didn't know really like that world. I come from military intelligence. My master's degree is in criminology and criminal justice, not the classics, certainly not anything Oxford's focused on. Yeah. And I sit down with the guy in the senior common room for lunch. And I say politely, so what do you work on? Because you don't want to say, what do you do? And I said, what do you work on? And he goes, oh, I'm an author, and all this. And I said, oh, okay, great. And I say to my wife, I go, I was a really nice guy. We had an interesting conversation. He writes a lot of books about like how God doesn't exist or something like that. And it was Richard Dawkins, and and so I still didn't know who he was, and so my daughter, who was in her senior year of college, she happened to be in Italy at the time, came over for a visit, and I told her, she goes, you don't know who Richard Dawkins is? Like, it's not really, my area, We walked by Blackwell's downtown, and there's a pyramid of Richard Dawkins' latest book. She goes, that's Richard Dawkins. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. My wife and I lived at we had our 3-month-old at the time with us. We moved over there when she was 3 months, and we lived at the Old Horse and Jockey on Woodstock. That was where we had a condo that we rented, or a flat, I should say. We had a flat. And behind us was visiting for a semester was, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the economist that I can't stand, the one who said the fax machine was going to be obsolete in 2005. Paul, he writes for the New York Times. Paul Krugman.
There we
Paul
go.
Krugman was.
Oh, Krugman.
Yeah. He was visiting professor or something there. And anyway, so that's me in a nutshell, and have a lot of experience with the government. I am currently also a occasional subject matter expert for the Department of Defense, usually the Air Force, sometimes the Navy, and once in a while
when they're not kicking you out.
When they're not disinviting me like they did a week ago. I was supposed to be in DC.
Yeah, that transparency and accuracy and truth can be really bad things for job security. It was the old
joke that Robert Downey Jr. had in one of the Marvel movies: an intelligence agency that fears intelligence, not a good thing.
Or what we used to say military intelligence was, what the military intelligence salute us?
The middle finger. I don't know.
So anyways, let's get right into it. And before we get into it, just want to let everyone know that definitely, if you've been watching the hearings on Capitol Hill, especially with Ron Johnson, the majority of those hearings are based on Naomi's work.
That's right.
So I don't know what Peeps Larrabee is, but that's popping up there. Let me get rid of that. But basically, the majority of the work, she doesn't claim it as her work, it's 3,000 volunteers. So you can get, the copy of the copy, which would be the hearings, or you get the real thing, which is the Pfizer papers right at the bottom there. Go to dailyclout.io/Pfizer-papers. Get your copy today. You won't be sorry, because this thing it's a coffee table book that might save your life. You get symptoms, you open it up, you can see all the horrible things that are in that mRNA, and It's peer reviewed 1,000 times over, and it's definitely a piece of history that might be part of saving humanity if we are able to.
I'm still waiting for Kramer's coffee table book of coffee tables as well. That's from Seinfeld. That was his big.
I love that episode. But all right, you and I talk all the time, and we will just go down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to be disciplined tonight. But let me see here. So where do you want to start? I can play a quick clip of your. I reached out to Brandon and I said, hey, man, we got all sorts of things going on. We got this fungus that showed up with these two researchers at University of Michigan. No surprise. There's been a lot of Chinese spies.
Let me just hit you with this. Let me just hit you with this. And my wife's in the other room, so she has very bad memories of her time at Yale. But when my wife was doing her PhD at Yale, she had to go to University of Michigan. Part of her thesis advisor or her dissertation advisory group, one of the ladies was a woman named Sharon Cardia. Big deal at University of Michigan. And I found out later that this woman is like the premier geneticist. And my wife explained to me, because I'm originally from South Bend, Indiana, so like I know University of Michigan because it's the rival to Notre Dame, and okay. And I went to college at DePaul University undergrad. So like that's and I know that Michigan ranks well with the law program and their political science department. But beyond that, I don't really know anything about Michigan, University of Michigan. She sat there and told me when I picked her up from the airport when she came back from that trip many moons ago, she was telling me that apparently University of Michigan, in many respects, is better than Yale and some of the Ivy Leagues at genetics research.
Really?
And sort of they're at the bleeding edge of a lot. And then this woman, Sharon Cardia, is one of those women who's just at the bleeding edge. So when I saw the story of the two University of Michigan students who brought
and Brandon, if you would, just so I don't cut you off, just quickly tell everyone, we know the story, but for those who might not be aware, can you just kind of give a brief?
I was getting ready to do that. Yeah. So basically, I believe it was a boyfriend-girlfriend team, supposedly. They were, I think, PhD candidates for the agricultural science or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what they call it at University of Michigan, but basically agricultural science is what they're doing.
Right.
And they are from China, and they were coming back into the country, I am assuming from a break where, they went back home, and they were caught smuggling a very, very serious fungus that is not in the United States. They traveled across the ocean with it in their bag or in their socks. I mean, I don't remember the exact detail of where they were hiding it, but they were hiding it. And when they got to the United States, they had this on them. This fungus, if it had gotten out, would have annihilated the crops in the United States. And everybody I've spoken to, and I've been speaking to some people, a lot of people in the scientific community, they're this is what they did. This is what they did before COVID. When I would bring up stuff about biotech in China, I was talking about biotech before COVID even hit. I was saying there's lax standards. It's very dangerous. And their response in the scientific community to me when I would bring this up was to downplay it. Well, this is just sort of how they do things over there. We want to do business with them. We want to do studies with them because they have a huge and growing, research industrial base, et cetera. So everybody I've talked to about this, the people on LinkedIn and whatnot that I talk to who are in that field, they're downplaying this. Oh yeah, it's a problem, but this wasn't an attack. This was just a couple of gung-ho scientists. They wanted to bring something that we don't normally study, blah, 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 blah. A bunch of malarkey. What this is like that scene in the prequel Star Wars where Yoda goes, "Begun the Clone Wars has." Well, this has begun the crop wars have. They're
really? Okay, Brandon, and just so people know, because I get hate texts as well when they see me looking away. I'm self-producing, so as he's talking, I'm bringing up visual aids, so I am listening to Brandon. But when you're self-producing, you got to run like three screens.
No, I'm not distracted at all. I have.
Oh, not you. I'm just telling the audience. Yeah,
I have a very large family now, so I'm used to having inputs.
Wait, how big is your family now?
3 kids and 1 wife. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. So, but
I've got 3 wives and 1 kid. No, I'm just joking.
How?
Wrong country, wrong state.
But no. So in my opinion, what I think this was a test run. They were trying to probe to see how far they could get into the United States without being detected with this very lethal fungus. And I would remind you, I don't know, Brian, if you're familiar with him, but he's a friend of mine, a guy named Michael Yan.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Michael's he's one of the best. And
and he did the majority of like the real tactical border work,
right.
especially down in the Darien Gap.
I think he's still down there. He might have come back. But anyway, the point is that Michael Yan for like 2 or 3 years now has been talking and warning about our food supply being targeted, that our food supply is under threat, both from abroad, but also from the globalists in the World Economic Forum. And as you know, my personal opinion is the WEF serves the CCP. But that's another topic.
And that's my learned opinion as well.
When we first met. Yeah. I remember we talked about this when we first met like 2 years ago. So my point is that I think what these two scientists were doing, these PhD students, is they were probing to see how far they could get in the United States. And if they had been able to do it, they probably would have gone all the way. Look, the Midwest has a lot of grain, a lot of things they grow out in the Midwest. It would not have been hard for them to get into a car, leave the University of Michigan, drive down to Indiana, or drive down to some of the other states in the Midwest, and deploy this fungus or fungi into the crops surreptitiously.
Sure.
And you would devastate, an untold amount of crops. Go ahead.
Hey, man. It just popped into my head, and so everyone knows me and Brandon talk like this constantly. It's constantly. I just thought of something. We have a really great member of this audience named Autumn, and she is, I think, out of Michigan, but also around Illinois and some of those states. They put up these lithium battery plants. Okay, like Goshen.
Yeah, Goshen.
These are Chinese owned. And they have very predatory practices on how they get it's mainly farmland out there.
Yeah.
And they come to them allegedly, and they'll say, hey, we would like to buy your land. And if you don't sell to us, it's going to get polluted anyways. So you might as well sell now. Why not make it useless now so they could buy up that land?
Well, exactly right. And exactly. And furthermore, I actually was on News Nation like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 2023 when the first stories of the farmland started coming out, and everybody was rightly fixated on the proximity of these properties near sensitive U.S. military bases. Right. But when I told the host, and she did not want to go with me on this, I told the host, I said, look, yes, the proximity to those military bases, that's part of this. But look also, it's not just near military bases these guys are trying to buy. I think they're trying to gain access and ownership over a bulk of our arable land in the North American continent, and they're going to do God knows what to the soil to erode our ability to reliably produce safe crops to feed our people. And
or just own it so they can send it back to China.
Well, that's certainly, and this is
because they can't grow anything out there.
That's right. And this is what they did actually, and that's another thing I brought up with her too. But they actually did this with Smithfield, the famous pork producer, the bacon producer.
Oh yeah.
Out of Virginia, where I used to live, Old Virginia. They actually, I think 20 years ago, sold to a Chinese firm,
WH Group, I believe.
That's right. And if you remember, during COVID, among the many shortages were bacon shortages, because even though we were it was Smithfield had a large presence in the United States, they would ship the animal. If I remember correctly, the way it goes is they would take the American pig, ship him to China for processing and slaughter there, and then they would ship the finished product packaged back to the United States. I think that's how it went. But the point is that they bought up they've been buying up major food producers, agribusinesses, to own them and to do and to feed themselves. Yes, but also I think also to have a line on our food production here.
Well, and so I actually did, I don't know if you know Philip, and I always mispronounce his name, Philip Lashinsky.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he's a friend of mine too.
I'm the source for a lot of his stories.
I was a source for that pork story. And what they're doing actually is, so Smithfield, what they did, I don't know if this is before or after the Chinese ownership, they started making a strain of pigs, or lion, a group pigs, where they genetically altered them to have 3 times the density of protein.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they ship that. They ship a lot of the pork back to China because that's their main consumed meat. They ship that back to China, but they had these special triple the protein pallets of pork that would go only to the People's Liberation Army, and the scraps go to the Lao Beijing, of course. Right. And they literally can't produce pork, and so the whole thing about remember. Right, literally around the same time as the big Spain blackouts and Portuguese blackouts, which, by the way, a lot of that infrastructure is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
They said, we're going to not take these imports from the U.S. Well, that doesn't include their own pork.
Right, of course.
So if they can genetically alter it that way, it stands to reason they can genetically alter it to have less protein, less nutrients.
Yeah.
Basically, in a generation, they can shrink the size of an American soldier.
That's right. And don't also forget, in terms of killing crops, I mean, our own agribusinesses have created crops with suicide genes where you can't replant them and regrow them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's, there are so much things they could do. It's probable that couple also was coming with the fungi. They had a petri dish of it. I'm sure they were planning to use their science materials at the University of Michigan to propagate more of that, to clone it basically, or to create more so they could spread it. And remember, we saw this in, was it Reedy, California, with the biolab, the open air biolab, the kamikaze lab. So
you talk about the guy that had the hoses going into his that's insane.
They were experimenting with Ebola and coronaviruses there, illegal. They somehow managed to get their hands on it. They were they're experimenting with rats, and they were supposedly releasing the rats into the Los Angeles homeless population. This was 2 years. Yeah,
you're gonna have to send me that link.
Gordon Chang wrote an essay at Gateston Institute back in 2023 on it. I was one of the sources there. If you just you can just search it.
I'll grab it from you.
At the Gateston, I don't have it on hand, but it was at the Gateston Institute. But anyway, so what you're seeing, I believe, is China probing, always probing, to see how they can complicate life for us. We hear about this new strain, supposedly, of COVID coming into the country. That's the most lethal one.
You're right at the same time that they approved a vaccine.
Of course. And of course, the Chinese will not allow any U.S.-created mRNA vaccine to be used on their citizens.
Yes, you notice that, which is funny because it's Fosun USA that produces, which is a Chinese company, produces our vaccines. Yeah. And they won't use it for their own people because
they will not allow it. Now, some people I talk to in DC say it's just because they don't want to have to humiliate themselves. They'd rather, not have a vaccine at all. And I said, no, I don't think that's bullshit. The case. I don't think that's the case at all. Well, this was, I know, and I agree with you. This was a 3-star general who was telling me this. I said, no, General, that is not correct. That is not what this is. Chen Wei, who's the general, they call her the goddess of war. She was the one they put in charge of COVID response in China during the pandemic. She created a nasal aerosol spray that was a coronavirus mitigator, but it was not, if I remember correctly, I don't believe it was mRNA, and it was designed specifically for people handling COVID cases and the military in particular. But it was a very different form of vaccination than anything the Americans were doing, anything the Americans were forcing most of our people in military to take. It was nothing like what we were doing, and that was purposeful. And I don't believe it's because they couldn't do it. China is a very advanced country. They are not these simple, they're not a giant North Korea, okay? They are a very serious player in tech. And so I think they knew what they were doing. My point with this is to say, though, if you remember the 2015 white paper, the Indians found it, and I have it in my book, Biohacked. It's chapter and verse. I just copied and pasted the whole document into I think it's chapter 11 is where it's at. Basically, the white paper that the Indians uncovered was presented in 2015 by the head of the People's Liberation Army Air Force. He was their chief surgeon. Their Air Force is like ours, where all the kind of eggheads go into the Air Force or the Navy in China. So this guy that presented this paper to Xi Jinping's group in 2015, he outlined how the Chinese military could weaponize coronaviruses and deploy them against the United States to collapse our healthcare system and our economy, and to create political disorder that would allow for a political regime shift in the United States. And in that chaos, the Chinese...
Say that again, and really, I just want the audience not to miss this. We've had this conversation. Just slow down a little bit. So I really want you to drive that point home.
Yeah. So let me just put this another way. The Chinese plan to use COVID to a coronavirus. They didn't say COVID-19, but a coronavirus, weaponize it and use it to not only disrupt the economy of the United States, which is the backbone of our military power. This is something James Mattis said when he worked for Obama, was that without our economy, our military can't fight. Anyway, and to create enough chaos and social unrest that it disrupts and overthrows the political system here in the United States. Man. And now my argument in the book, and I got a lot of flack for this, and I said this on Bannon's show, and Bannon is the only guy, and I think you are as well, who've agreed with me that COVID, I think, was purposely unleashed by Xi Jinping. When it was unleashed was when Xi thought Trump's coming after him with the Hong Kong protests and with all of the trade war stuff, the agricultural trade war, the tech trade war in the first term. So Xi was very smart. He knew going into an election year, Trump's unbeatable going into 2020, but you initiate this virus, you deploy it, and then you get all the scheming weasels in DC to help you along.
God, they really know our capital. They really know the swamp.
They do. Well, they own it. And furthermore, I mean, everybody talks about APAC owning Washington. It's like, okay, yeah, they're a player there, but the Chinese own everything, man. They own everybody there. This is anyway. But my point is that COVID, the Chinese knew would not be this lethal plague like, the Black Death. They didn't want it to be. They just wanted it to cause fear and chaos because that's where they thrive. And they're trying to do that again, is what I'm getting at.
They're doing it again.
Not only with this new COVID strain, but with the crop war, with they're looking at water, by the way, water rights, trying to own water in the United States. This is a huge thing. Water wars are happening all around the world with increasing regularity. In fact, this war between India and Pakistan was partly a water war. The war between India and China in 2020 over Galwan was partly a water war. So so the Chinese, you talked about the unrestricted warfare doctrine, or not doctrine, but the kind of the mosaic approach to winning a future war.
Well,
this is how they're doing it. Everything is part of the war, not just military versus military.
Gotcha. And that's perfect. And I put Brandon's book up. I will put the link in the description. By the way, Brandon, when you have to go, because you got like a million kids and a lovely wife who's waiting for you, just go. We get it. But if you got time, let's get into some of these articles that you sent me. And these are important because what's happening right now is it seems that China is really ramping up their plans to invade Taiwan. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong. I think this is what they're getting ready to do, and I think they're waiting to see what Russia's going to do also in response to the recent attack by Ukraine. As a sidebar, I am tracking, and I don't want to say that Russia's stupid or crazy enough to do this, but I am tracking this Cosmos 2548, I think, satellite, which is tracking our National Reconnaissance Office has the Crystal constellation, and they're right now Cosmos 2548 is within 50 miles, which is very close for space, of USA 338, which is part of the KH Crystal constellation of National Reconnaissance Office electro-optical
Brandon, satellites. I'm not gonna lie to you. I literally have no idea what you're talking about. Can you just explain that as if I'm a really smart 13-year-old?
What I'm saying is that the Russians have placed a satellite that can attack other satellites near our very sensitive surveillance satellites, the kind of satellites we use to help Ukraine target Russia. And there is a possibility, and I still think it's not going to happen, but there is a possibility that Putin is going to punish us because he knows we helped target by taking out some of those targeting satellites. And if he does that, that's not just going to affect our presence in Europe. That's going to affect our ability to have situational awareness in the Indo-Pacific. And I believe that there is a possibility that China is waiting to see what Putin will do. And if he decides to do a space Pearl Harbor, the Chinese will exploit that because they know that it will not only affect our systems in Europe, it'll affect the entire system globally that we use.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm getting at here. And so I do believe that China is preparing to take Taiwan. I do believe they are preparing the battlefield as never before. This is why they have the islands surrounded. And unfortunately, I believe they will win. And I don't believe that the United States really can do anything at this point anymore to stop it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, so many avenues we go down with these conversations, because as I talk to you, I wasn't even thinking of the satellites. And you
that's
wrote
where
the
my
book.
mind first goes is always space, because that's
Always space, and they're doing a lot in space. And look, when I look at Russia and China, what I see is it's almost like an abusive marriage.
exactly.
Where Russia's the abused, inferior in that relationship, and they really would love to get out of it, but unfortunately,
We have a crazy elite that will not let Trump do peace.
we're not consistent. Like
Right.
Trump's consistent, but Trump's not going to be there. And I think they're thinking long term. They're not thinking in 4-year terms.
I don't even think Trump's in control right now. So
I don't think he is either. Don't even get me going on Maha.
well, I'm just talking about the intelligence community. I think there's a
that's a good segue.
But it all connects to what we're talking about, because what happens inside here in the country is going to affect how we respond and how we are viewed, whether we're viewed strong or weak.
Well, and I agree with you. Now, having spent almost 3 decades in the intelligence community in a couple different agencies, it's a big place. When you say he's not in control of the intelligence agency, what specifically do you think he's being kept out of?
Well, I think he's being kept out of the details of the Ukraine desk. I can tell you that much.
That for sure.
I think that, for instance, I think what happened was this thing that they hit Russia with last weekend, I think was cooked up in the Biden era. And I think that they kept it under lock and key. It's not a question of telling the president. I think how it works is the president has to have people who are intellectually curious enough to ask the right questions of their underlings at CIA in particular.
Let me give you some insider baseball really quickly.
Yeah.
Not saying I work there. Just I may have gone to the Culinary Institute of America, but that's about it. I will say this. It's alleged that a certain analyst was asked how many people he had influenced in a certain major region of the world. Yeah. And when said analyst said, how could I possibly know that? They said, just pick a number. So what the president sees is what they release from circle within the circle within the circle at that division.
Let me just jump in real quick, because when I was on the Hill trying to have oversight over this agency,
good luck.
Was a nightmare, because they would tell Congress whatever Congress needed to hear, but never what we wanted to know. That was how that played.
We found you guys annoying. I mean, they did.
Well, look, and we were all of us annoying with good reason.
Well, and that's a whole nother, I'm working on that paper right now. I'll probably get killed for it, but that's okay. But what would happen is also the thing is, like, no one knows what anyone's doing over there.
I know.
Desk to desk. And so
compartmentalization is a big problem.
Well, it's like, even like, just real quick sidebar so people understand, it's like even their clearances are completely air-gapped.
Right.
Which is a real pain in the ass as a careerist, because if you, all you younglings out there, if you end up with a clearance and going in the intel community, do not go to the CIA. Because once you're in there, they decide if you can leave, not because they'll kill you, but they'll hold on to your clearance and they will let that sucker die on the vine.
Yeah.
Because it's the only agency in the entire intel community, and certainly not by far, not even close to the biggest budget, but they're the only completely independent agency.
Right. Right.
So and that's what a lot of.
And so what I think is going on is I think that just like with Porter Goss in 2005.
Do you know what they called his little minions that followed him around?
I probably heard it before, but go ahead and tell me.
The Goslings.
The Goslings, yeah. Okay, I actually knew one of them. Porter Goss was our senator down here, and he's from Sanibel. But anyway, what they did to Porter Goss was they basically hermetically sealed him in the 7th floor offices and his team, and they didn't share anything with him. They didn't really give him the information he needed. He didn't really know what to ask for because, let's face it, he was a politician. He was not an intelligence guy. He didn't know where the bodies were buried. Anyway, so they're doing the same thing on a larger scale to Ratcliffe, who I've been told, well, I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to say it, but they're doing it the same thing to Ratcliffe. They're doing the same thing to
Ratcliffe, for everyone, that's a
John Ratcliffe
director of the CIA.
He was a former congressman. I think he was on the Intel committee when I worked on the Hill. Gabbert, the same thing with Gabbert. They are. She didn't even get to pick her deputy. The deep state picked her deputy.
No one in the individual agencies never talked to DH. I mean, not DH, but
DNI, right.
DNI, but they never like DNI. Like, first of all, this CIA has an axe to grind with the DNI.
Of course, because it cleaved away their special status.
They used to be that.
Right, the DCI was the DNI. That's right, right. So anyway, what I think's happening is, they're just not telling Trump everything he needs to know. And they're letting this thing run on autopilot. This is, by the way, and there's a great book I'm reading, by the way, called The Truth About Watergate, and it's by Nick Bryant. He's a great reporter. He's a lefty, but he's an excellent old gumshoe type reporter. And basically, this is the same thing that the CIA did to JFK with the Bay of Pigs, where they kind of briefed him on some things, but they didn't really tell him the details that he needed to know, and his team didn't really know what to ask. And so everything just sort of went on autopilot. And when the whole thing went upside down on him, the expectation always was they would trick JFK, this new president, into just going directly into war with Cuba and therefore the Soviet Union. Well, the same thing I think was happening here with this program, and to hit Russia and to try to kill Putin. Remember, 2 weeks ago they tried to assassinate Putin. They didn't tell Trump any of this, and their hope was that they could just get him to go along with them, kill the peace process, and go to war with anyway. So my point here with this is, Trump is not running large swaths of our national bureaucracy, not because he doesn't want to, like Biden. Biden didn't want to. He didn't care. It's because
I don't think Biden even knew where he was.
I agree. But my point is, it's because he's not being briefed. They have figured out how to fight him without him going at them. First term, they would fight him publicly. He and his followers would go at them. It was back and forth. Now they just grin at the president, nod. They say, yes, sir. And then they go and do whatever the hell they want to do on their own.
Which they always have.
Yeah, but with other presidents, they at least paid respect or lip service to the fact that he was giving an order and they would do it. Like if they wouldn't have done this to George W. Bush. They wouldn't have done this even to Barack Obama. But they're going to do this to Donald Trump.
And keep in mind, after bin Laden was killed, right? That's when the purge started. That's when veterans like me, like military veterans, older people, started getting, in my case, I was a contractor, so they just eliminated subject matter expert positions.
Right.
And so, which is the highest position, so I had no contract.
Right.
And I'd have to go back to my company and find a new contract. That's right. But they just basically purged that way, or they just, and
then they brought in some DEI stuff.
That was some people, not even the DEI, like some people, like a very good friend of mine who fought and kept his clearance, he was marched out. Yeah. Because someone charged him with time card fraud, which is insane because you have to badge in and badge out. It's pretty open and shut case, and, obviously it was all there. And he basically lost his job on the basis of, well, we know you wanted to.
Yeah.
leave early. I'm not kidding you. So, but he fought, he got his clearance, and he's in a good position right now, which is good for me too, because, we talk.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
the point is, like, even in, and we'll get back to the topic really quickly, and I know it's getting late, but even within the detachments and the teams, it's like, like the field guys
Yeah.
and girls don't even tell the desk officer what's really going on. They don't tell the, division chief certainly what's going on, or the, the group. So there's like, division, then group, they don't tell them because they don't trust anyone.
Right. No, I get it. And that's, so you have you have a natural tendency to compartmentalize, coupled with the actual kind of like militant vision that Trump is an enemy and must be treated as such, and therefore we will play keep away.
Well, and that's why I brought up the whole like purge, because the people that got brought in there, like, a lot of people, they think it's like the Colin Farrell movie where like you go through all this training and then
The Recruit.
Terrible movie. Like, and the guy circles CIA, which is at the end of Garcia in the Washington Post. And trust me, man, I've heard so many people I know, they're like, I once they tried to recruit me for the CIA. This guy came up to me in a bar. And I'm like, God, we've all seen the movie. But the thing is, what happened was I looked at what they were bringing in, and you would think that you'd bring in, people that look Middle Eastern for the Middle East jobs, and people that look kind of Russian for the Russian jobs. Is mainly they were bringing in attractive women.
Well, we know the Epstein thing was all about honeypotting. So, and
this wasn't even about that. It wasn't
DEI,
about that.
Right?
No, it wasn't even DEI. This is about the majority of the people that make that selection are men who just thought they were hot.
Well, that's what I mean.
Because I asked, I'm like, oh, you're bringing in the attractive women as like, as a bit naive. I'm out of the military.
Yeah.
Being in the military from 18 till 30 is like arrested development. So I'm like, oh, cool, that's cool, man. You're bringing hot girls to like recruit like spies, and they're like, no, we're just bringing them because they're hot. But that's what's going on.
And so this is the situation the country finds itself in. We don't have a president really, and that's not I want to make it clear, where I used to say that about Biden because he literally was the man who wasn't there. This is different. This is Trump very much wants to be president. They're not letting him be president. And I was talking to some Russians yesterday, and they didn't understand because they're very irate and they're blaming Trump. And I said, look, I get it. He's the head of state. You can be mad at him all you want, but he's not running things right now. What do you mean he's not running? I said he's not running the show. His people have been isolated. He's not getting all the information, and he now knows it. And he now knows that his legacy, this was going to be his legacy, making peace. They are now completely neutering that legacy. 100.
And when you say they, who do you think that they are? I'm
talking about the permanent bureaucracy members who do not share his worldview, who believe he is, the people who were donning the pussy hats, a lot of CIA analysts I know were partaking in that march, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm just, it's a group of neoconservative and neoliberal types who are globalists, who love Obama. Many of them were hired during the Obama years, so they're very, very loyal to Obama. Some of the older guys who were not hired by Obama, they were in earlier and they're in senior positions now, they feel threatened because they see what Trump's doing to like Brennan, and they're worried, he's going to go after me. When he says he's going to drain the swamp, he might actually find out the dirty laundry that I've been hiding. And so it's a coalition of like minds, fellow travelers. Our friend Emerald Robinson calls them communist revolutionaries. I think in some cases that's the fact. I think in other cases it's just
I think she's right. Yeah.
I do too. And I think in other cases those people who just don't like Trump and they think he's a threat to their job and to their security. And it's not about the country. It's not about the country though. It's not like, we think it's
but it never is.
I know. But for the people out there watching this, it's nothing to do with like we're making a moral stand because he's a bad leader in our eyes.
No, they're not.
It's because he's moving in on their action and they don't like it.
Oh, look, I know a person down the street who has a government job. I won't even way up here in rural America. And when you talk to them, they're pissed off because they work for a government
Right.
agency up, in the housing area.
Mhm.
And they said, oh my God, he sucks because I lost my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Most
like,
of America is cheering that on. We want more of them to lose their jobs.
And look, I've got to make, I've got to give a hat tip. My very good friend, Dr. Yang Jian Li, he got a lot of his funding cut. He's a Chinese dissident. He's a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said, but I understand why they had to do it.
They had to, because that money, so much of that money, not with him, but so much of that money has been proven to be used for nefarious purposes that actually hurt American interests. And the only way to stop it was just to go in with an axe and just start chopping.
Absolutely.
Because it was so pervasive and bad. And so this is, by the way, getting back on the point, this is the situation now that the Indo-Pacific finds itself in. They are looking to the United States. What are we going to do? Well, there's not much we can do, first of all, because the Chinese, and this is what my articles are about, is the sort of technical intelligence.
Yeah, let's talk about them in order.
Yeah,
really quickly.
Sure.
All right, so let me just, if you can bear with me here.
Into a significant development in international military cooperation, the joint Air Force exercise between China and Egypt, highlighting the performance of China's J-10C fighters and their implications on global defense dynamics. Chinese J-10C fighters impress U.S. ally, Egypt in landmark joint exercise. In a historic move, China and Egypt conducted their first ever joint Air Force training exercise, Eagles of Civilization 2025, from April 17 to May 4th, 2025. Hosted at a major Egyptian air base near the Gulf of Suez.
Just tell me when to stop.
This exercise marked the first time China deployed a complete Air Force package to Africa, making it a milestone in Beijing's growing defense diplomacy footprint.
You can just stop it here real quick. I can just walk you through it too.
Yes.
The key thing here is there's 2 points, and this is actually an article building off of the one that went viral and got me death threats from thousands of Indian bots. It is my contention, having studied this now for a decade, the United States has always told itself, well, you know what? We don't have the largest military, but we have the most technologically powerful one. The Americans can no longer say that. The Americans can no longer say that, and we now have the examples of how Chinese military has not only beaten us in mass production, which they have completely beaten us in mass production, but now it turns out the systems they're churning out like sausages are actually, if not as good as American
Really?
systems. Yes. And yes, and I can break it down for you more. They're either as good or they're better. And we just had this demonstrated. So there's a reason. So Egypt is now, Egypt's one of our strongest partners, right? In the Muslim kind of greater Middle East was what we used to call it back in the day, which is the whole Muslim world. Egypt is one of our biggest allies. They purchase our military equipment left and right. They're annoyed with us because of what Israel's doing in Gaza and all that. But and that's part of why they're opening up to China now. But the real reason, it's very understandable. The Chinese are selling systems that they now know are as good as, say, our F-16, like the J-10, I think was the one that was featured.
The J-10, yeah, that's the next part of the video.
There's also the J-17. These are the planes that were being demonstrated for the Egyptians and that were participating in that exercise. Those planes are now as good as American 4th generation and 4.5 generation warplanes, and they're for a fraction of the price. And what was demonstrated in the Indo-Pakistani war at last month was, yes, that the Indians were able to achieve their strategic objectives. Yes. We all knew that they would be able to do that. But how they did it was very messy and very dangerous, because the first couple days of the war, the Indians were expecting to just fly in with those French fighters.
Right.
And, it turns out that the Chinese-made fighters and PL-15 air-to-air missiles that the Pakistani Air Force used were actually better than the very expensive $288 million per plane French Rafale, which is the premier French warplane on the market.
Wait,
today.
but did you see? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't know what the Rafale was, so I'm glad you explained it, because I had 2 hours to prep. did you see all of the news outlets saying that the Rafale beat the Chinese equipment?
Yeah, this is where I've gotten legal action threatened against me in the last month. I've gotten death threats. The fact of the matter is, I have proven, and this is why I know I'm right, because all the threats of all this other stuff have gone away, because there's nothing they can do. I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, not only with my sources in the U.S. intelligence community, as well as I have 2 French sources who are very high up in the French intelligence network, and they have confirmed this to me. The French know that this happened, and the French have egg on their face as much as the Indians do.
Big time.
And
especially with this push for increased budgets for defense in Europe. This is
right. This is right. This
terrible
is
timing.
Exactly right. Exactly. And also there's now this spat between India and France, but that's another story, over this whole issue, because the Indians rightly think that they were bilked, and they were, by the way. And my point here is with getting all of this is the Chinese are now in a position where in their near abroad, right? So that which is the part that they care about right now, in the area that is closest to their shores that they want to have immediate control over, they now not only have way more systems than we do, but now it turns out those systems that they have in abundance are as advanced or more advanced than the U.S. military. That's a big problem, because and by the way, before we even got to that point, about a decade ago, China did building out anti-access area denial, A2AD capabilities. They are now the world leader in what's known as A2AD. And that's basically they forward deployed large, massive amounts of long-range missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, long-range strike missiles for blowing up Guam bases, airfields in Okinawa and whatnot, the Marine barracks in Okinawa. They now have also hypersonic weapons in abundance. They're called the carrier killer. These weapons are specifically designed to track and kill American aircraft carriers before those aircraft carriers can get close to launch planes to possibly fight China. So my point here is, they now, with that kind of think of it as like a bubble around the areas that China wants to dominate, keeping American forces out. They now, on top of that, have within that bubble infinitely more systems, and those systems are as advanced or better in some cases than the American systems that they'd be going up against. And so we are no longer, the military balance of power, in my opinion, has fundamentally shifted, at least in the first island chain, which is the chain of islands from, I think, Kamchatka through Japan down to the Philippines.
Which is surrounding.
Yes, with Taiwan being the beating heart of that island chain. That's the island chain that China needs to dominate in the next decade. They are already doing it. In my opinion, we've already lost the first island chain, just like we lost South Korea without a shot ever being fired. If we ever do decide, we're going to defend Taiwan, it will be a slaughter of the United States. It'll be like the Marianas turkey shoot in reverse.
Totally. And the sad part about that, I was just talking about this with Naomi today. I said, it was Obama that pretty much gave the green light to Chinese to take it, because we have a treaty with the Philippines. I've been to the Philippines. I spent 2 years on a cot in the Philippines down in Zamboanga, and we have the visiting forces room, but we also have a duty to protect them in every level. And they were begging for us when Obama was president to hey, these, effers are coming in, stealing all our fish. They're water canning us out of our own territorial waters. He did nothing.
Well, it was specifically one man, somebody that I know, and somebody who actually knew better than to do this, was a man named Kurt Campbell. And he was, for the Obama-Biden era, he was a very serious China hawk. But for some reason, in 2009, when they first got into office, Obama did, and the Chinese immediately started those man-made island building projects in the South China Sea, which is now where a lot of these A2AD emplacements are. Kirk Campbell, in a moment of bizarre, flight of fancy, told Obama, you know what, we should not do anything because we're trying to get a reset on relations with Beijing, and we don't want to come across as too hostile and put them in a defensive crouch. Well, in reality, that is precisely what we needed to do, because I believe the Chinese, had we come at them hard diplomatically and said, you're going to stop this, I think they would have stopped this, and they wouldn't have the A2AD capability they have today had Obama not listened to Kirk Campbell. That's not to excuse Obama, but I do not understand why Kirk Campbell did what he did. He says it was his single greatest mistake in government service, was recommending that action. He, within 6 months, regretted it, and he knew that we were basically effed for the next 30 years because of that ridiculous decision.
Oh, it's insane. And, for those who are listening, if they want to know what Brandon's talking about the man-made islands, all you got to do is go to Google Earth, Google Maps, and Google, look up Mischief Reef.
Yeah.
And it pops right up. And if you use a time little clock there on Google Earth, you can go back in time and actually see this thing build up. It's insane.
Now, at the same time, though, I want to just kind of take the strategic view here. Mm-hmm. And this makes me very unpopular with certain people. We are now at the point where it is utterly idiotic to think that we are going to somehow take that back, that we are going to somehow manage. It's not going to happen. And I don't believe Trump wants to fight.
Does it need to happen?
Well, I think what China's doing right now is they're goading us. We've just placed the, I forget the system. We just placed an anti-ship ballistic missile system the Marines did off the coast of the Bashi Strait, which is, it's a waterway cutting through northern Philippines, which connects the South China Sea with the sea near Taiwan. And the Chinese are going to need to sail through that in order to do their blockade of the southern portion of Taiwan. The Chinese will be able to overcome that system. It's I think 1 or 2 batteries. We don't have enough of them. It's typical America. We don't have enough of these things. And I think that just on autopilot, again, if something were to happen, we'll just initiate launch. And I think that's going to be a problem, because I don't think we can beat them in the current way things are going in the first island chain. I think we're going to need to step back. With you. And then we're going to need to step back and start looking at the second island chain, and maybe
basically contain them.
Yeah, because we're the Chinese, contrary to what certain people think, friends of mine, the Chinese are not collapsing. They're not going anywhere. They are the second wealthiest country they have the second largest economy GDP wise. They produce more ships. So get this. Here's a fact. My buddy Dan Collins, who still does run factories in China. He lives in Miami now, but he was telling me on his podcast last weekend that he read a statistic that the Chinese shipbuilding industry last year built more civilian and military ships than the entire U.S. shipbuilding industry did for the entirety of World War II. So that's the height. That's the height of our.
Well, it also shows you the posture they're in, right? As well.
Oh, absolutely. And all of those ships are dual use, because the ro-ro ferries, for instance, that China has, that commuters use to get between cities with their cars, it's a car ferry. Well, it turns out since 2012, all the roll-on, roll-off ro-ro ferries for civilians, China has built them to military specifications, so the Chinese Marines can use them in a invasion scenario of Taiwan. So the notion that, because the Navy says this to me all the time, and I push back on them so hard when they tell me this. Every time I talk to the Navy, invariably somebody says, well, they can't do an amphibious landing until 2027, the earliest, because they don't have enough amphibious landing. I hate
those. Yes.
And I go, hold on. You're right. They only have a handful.
And really quickly, Brandon. So for those that don't really focus on this area, the amphibious landing is key, because they supposedly don't want to wreck the infrastructure of the chip production with a bombardment. Otherwise, I think if Taiwan didn't have the semiconductor industry, they'd just bomb them into oblivion.
I think that might be it, but I think there's a cultural thing as well. The Chinese view the Taiwanese as fellow Chinese, as fellow Han Chinese. Huh. There is a cultural. So I was talking to somebody from Hong Kong about a year ago. We were on speaking at a U.S. military facility in St. Louis, and this individual told me, she said, Well, first of all, she said, "I don't believe they're going to invade Taiwan." I go, "Why? Why?" I go, "Why?" She goes, "I think they're more likely to hit Japan in the Senkaku Islands than they." I go, "Why though? What's the thought?" She said, "Well," she goes, "in China, the sons are prized," and she said, "and in China, most families who have sons in the military, they view Taiwanese as fellow Chinese, and you don't want to kill fellow Chinese." And so it's going to take a lot to get them to pull the trigger on this. And I don't think that's necessarily correct, but I do think from a cultural perspective,
I mean, it could be at the tactical, or as like to say stractical level, so I mean, I don't think it's true in the inner circles, but
I agree, but I do think that there will be a hesitancy to totally annihilate the island because of that. Just as, by the way, and this makes me very unpopular with our friends at the Pentagon. The Russians, contrary to the media, the way the media presents it, Putin has actually held a lot of things in reserve, fighting Ukraine. Yes, there's been atrocities. Yes, there's been excesses, but that's war. And the Ukrainians are as guilty as the Russians are in that. The key thing is Russia has the capacity to, in 24 hours, render Ukraine into a moonscape if they want to.
Thank you. I know, right? And here's why I know is because when I went into the intelligence community, right out of high school, went to the military, went right into it. I mean, we had really as examples of like intel we could look at was Soviet stuff. And yes, of course, like the whole thing when people are like, oh, Ukraine's stopping them with Molotov cocktails. And I'm like, they're not stopping anything that the Russians don't want them to stop.
That's right. And so when I talk to and again, I have a lot of Russian friends these days. I talk to a lot of very senior people in Russia, and that probably I shouldn't, but
it's okay. I still talk to mine.
It helps me with my reporting. And
Brandon, I'm sorry, really quickly. People forget that like we used to work with the Spetsnaz.
I know.
And me personally, like it's like that was a given. Hollywood didn't really care about Russia anymore.
Right.
I mean, look at the whole Burn After Reading with Brad Pitt and
the Russians.
Like the Russians, like who goes to the Russians, right? Yeah. They had Vladimir Putin singing Blueberry Hill at a Hollywood benefit back in like 2007. And then they only became the boogeyman when Trump looked like he could win.
Well, and also because they were plotting this war under Hillary Clinton had she won, and I have that in my book, A Disaster of Our Own Making. But anyway, my point here with talking about real quickly why I'm bringing up Russia is because the reason Vladimir Putin has resisted the urge to annihilate everything in Ukraine when he easily could is because it's a cultural icon. For the Russian people, Kyiv in particular, the capital is it's original Russia. It's where the Russian culture sprang from, the Kievan Rus.
All right.
For them, this and Putin has made, whether he believes it or not, I don't know, but Putin has made this Orthodox Christian kind of ideology, this Eurasianist view of the world according to Putin. You have to have icons for that. And one of the great icons is Kyiv. You cannot flatten it. Now he's probably going to. There's probably not going to be a Kyiv left standing after this next week, from what I'm hearing. Not with nukes. He's just going to use conventional. He's got enough conventional.
Yeah, no, he's been talking about the summer offensive. Which is,
and they're already hitting Sumy. Okay, but anyway, so my point is with the Chinese and Taiwan. The Chinese are probably going to want to try to preserve their brothers in Taiwan from too much, destruction, not only because of the chips, the TSMC factories there, but also because they view them culturally as wayward brothers, and they want to bring them back into the fold.
You think that really matters to them?
I think it really does. Maybe not to Xi.
Okay, so not to like the.
I don't think they really care, but I think for the people who are going to be executing the mission, I think Xi has to pay homage to that. I think Xi is aware that his people view their people in Taiwan as their people, not as
you lose the generals, man. It's over.
which is why he's purging so many right now. But
Makes sense.
so I think that this is why what I did at the Heritage Foundation last year is I walked them through what I think was going to be the Chinese order of battle. And I think basically what they're going to do is they're going to do a salami slice strategy. You're going to see a massive fleet of warships slice away the outlying islands, Matsu, Kinmen.
They're doing that.
And Pangu. They're already doing it. And then they're going to use that and they're going to effect a blockade. They'll call it a quarantine like we did with Cuba in 62. They will effect a blockade and they will slowly strangulate the island. And then after a period of time, they will then go in. But they're going to go in and they're going to target the suspected government, and military targets first.
Right.
They're not going to try to go against the population too hard. And I'm not even convinced that the population is really going to resist. I don't think the resistance.
35% of the population favors the CCP.
And I think that number could be higher once they get cut off from the world by a Chinese blockade over the course of 6 months. You tell me what a mother of a starving baby in a first world country, otherwise like Taiwan, is going to how effective they're going to be in resisting the pull of surrendering to China.
Well, it reminds me a lot of what was like the 20s or the 30s when like the nationalists are trying to like rally people against the Japanese, but they got no food, they've got no ammo, they're cut off, and the Chinese Communist Party just waited.
Right.
And then once they swept through them.
And so I talked to a friend of mine during the Biden years. He called me. It was actually during the pullout in Afghanistan, and he was effing irate. He called me, and so he's yelling at he's describing for me how Blinken isn't there and they can't reach Blinken, and he suggested they blow up the white helicopters that we were using, and he was told it's not going to happen. We're just going to leave him there. It's just easier to leave him there. So in the course of this conversation, I blurted out, what the fuck's going to happen to Taiwan when the shit hits the fan there? And he goes, oh, well, I'm not worried about that. I go, how can't you be worried about, look at what you're going through right now. He said, no, you know what we'll do. He goes, well, we're going to covertly resupply the resistance. And I just thought about it and I go, how the fuck are we going to resupply a resistance movement if we can't get our ships close enough because of the A2AD bubbles and because their systems are so good on these new Chinese warships?
Well, not only that, Brandon, and I'm doing a forced segue here because I did promise the audience before you have to take off that we would at least show them how the threat might actually look, the military threat might actually look. And on that note, what I see happening now, right, is before anything happens, it's we might want to resupply them, but guess what's going to happen? We're going to have a crisis over here. Of course,
because the Chinese are going to kick over the hornet's nest here. Remember, they're going to target our space assets. They're going to target our cyber. They're going to disrupt the electromagnetic spectrum, the EM spectrum. They're going to do all these things. There's going to be all kinds of economic issues arising.
Well, let me show this really quickly because I know you got to go. I know it's getting late, but
5 or 10 more minutes for me.
Okay, good. I'll make it quick. So let me see here. So basically what they're talking about here is hopefully it's on this video, but it's a really good animation that I found of the drones, but in a nutshell, I'm not gonna waste our time trying to find it, but in a nutshell, what happened is, they go out there,
even after spending $2 billion on the project, it decided the helicopter's role on the battlefield can destroy military equipment worth millions.
So what they're doing is they're taking DJI drones, as you know, but for the audience, exactly like this. Okay.
Yep. I forgot you have some. Yeah.
This is the Mavic. This is the one. And I even have the radar stuff on there. I don't know if you could see
You have to tell me how you like it because I'm thinking about buying one.
Oh, the Mavic is amazing. I've had this Mavic, just so you know, if you look up the Hollywood Reporter about Rex Peterson, the guy that trained all the horses for like Game of Thrones and all that, one of the guys they based Horse Whisperer on, I busted him for abusing horses with this drone.
Wow.
Okay, but now what they're doing is they're hooking up, and this one's, I've taken it apart because I'm replacing the gimbal, which is the stabilizer.
Yeah.
But you see the danger of this, and this is the exact model. They're not the exact model. They probably have the newer one, but you see the way this folds up?
Yeah.
That can fit in a cargo pocket.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Right? In fact, if you watch clips of YouTube of what's going on in the front lines, they will have guys pulling those things out of cargo pants. I've seen it.
And I know this because I bought this because I was a private investigator, and local police don't like drones.
Right.
So I'd land this thing, I'd put it in my pocket. They say, "You see a drone?" I'm like, "I heard it. I don't know where it went," and it's right there. But the thing about this is this thing has, check this out. This drone here has a huge, huge radius. And just because anyone can watch a commercial, but here's an example from the O'Shea residence here. Okay, so they're talking in this tele. I'll put this in the recording so I don't keep you. But basically, if you go to, okay, so here we go. This is the house I'm at now. This thing has a 4-mile radius.
Yes.
That's me flying.
So now it's heading what direction?
We're going to go towards a trail.
Okay.
It's tiny. And it's heavy so it can sustain heavy winds.
So we're looking there now.
Yes.
Hooks up to a phone.
That's what
and then you can see.
Right?
And for this case, when you're looking through trees, I always say
you got it.
You can
Okay.
So Brian, I'm gonna let your audience know that this what we saw happen in Russia, what the Ukrainians did with these drones. As you know, I spend a lot of time on sensitive military bases in the United States.
Yep.
And I think I sent you the article. I don't remember if I sent you the article where I talked about some of the security lapses at Edwards Air Force Base and Luke Air Force.
Yeah, you did. I have it right here.
So the DGI right now in peacetime, quote unquote peacetime, produces, I think in the year 2025 is going to produce 500,000 units. They can ramp that production up pretty quickly in about, I think, 4 to 6 weeks in wartime to 700 to 750,000 units. So you can just imagine the scale. My friend John Conrad, who is the founder of G Captain, he's a former merchant marine. He's the editor of gcaptain.com. Wonderful guy. He, about 2 years ago, warned the Biden administration, and they blackballed him for this. He said, "Hey, look, the Chinese can easily take one of those container ships that they send to our port and fill it up with thousands of these DJI drones." And
that's what I was alluding to in the introduction.
I know. And that's why I wanted to bring it back. Now, what they used in Ukraine were container trucks, and they had like a secret compartment where they kind of lifted out of, and et cetera. The United States military has some of our most sensitive facilities are very penetrable right now. So Edwards Air Force Base, so your audience doesn't know, Edwards Air Force Base is where Skunk Works is, Lockheed Martin's Black Project facility. It is an iconic, Hal Puthoff and those guys work out there. This is where you will see a lot of strange shapes in the sky coming from at night in the California desert. Wink. So this is, it's not aliens. But anyway, so there is the main runway on base. It goes into an empty lake bed that is at the end of the runway. And what I was told by sources at the base, I didn't report it because I did not want to have any violation of security protocol.
Right.
I waited until they plugged the gap, and I know that they plugged the gap. So that's why I'm talking about it 5 years after I was told about this. The people on the base there told me that, Brandon, we have a problem where we wait till night and we send these experimental planes up into the sky. At the end of the runway,
that sounds familiar, Brandon.
At the end of the runway is a dry lake bed, and we have been intercepting, quote unquote, families who were camped out in the dry lake bed, Chinese families, and they just happen to have high resolution photography equipment on them. And base security, the pilots would radio in as they're taking off, "Hey, there's people in the lake bed." Base security would go out. But as I was told at the time, the issue was that part of the lake bed was not U.S. government property. It was owned by a private landholder who had owned it for decades, even before the base.
It doesn't matter. There's overlap.
So what they would do is they would intercept these people, they would collect them, they would bring them into the base for debrief, and they would interrogate them. They would not be able to do criminal action against them. This is what I was told, that they were ordered.
What year was this?
This was 2020, 2021, and I believe 2022, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
We know why. I mean, we know why. You know who's president at the time. And so they were ordered not to prosecute. These people were all foreigners. They were passport holders of China. They were all Chinese citizens, and the one MP or the one Air Force police guy said to me, he said, these guys were not even family. This was like random kids that we could just tell they weren't actually.
How could you know? Because they suspended DNA testing.
Right. Well, what he was saying is they just didn't act like they were actually a family. But anyway, so it was catch and release type thing. And what the base commander was trying to do was trying to get the U.S. government to purchase that plot of land so we could push the security perimeter out. So my understanding is that was eventually done years later. But for 4 or 5 years, so now just imagine if instead of cameras, these guys were armed with DJI drones.
Exactly.
Think of the kind of chaos that they could. Similar, Luke Air Force Base. Love going out to Luke. They're wonderful. They're freaking phenomenal people out there. Luke Air Force Base has a large F-35 contingent. The F-35 is our most, supposedly, I'm very critical, but it's our most advanced, expensive warplane, 5th generation. Now, one of the guys out there told me the big security concern is, he said, an F-50 caliber sniper rifle, while these things are parked, we'll take one of these things out. We can't fly it. And he said, it's very susceptible. And I said, well, all planes are. So he goes, well, yeah, but this is our big warplane. This is our main bird. And he said, and there's a chain of mountains right outside the base. Now, technically, with trails. Now, yes, it's true. The base does security checks there. They, send out their guys. But he told me, he said, we've been catching people who've been out there for a while. And he said, and we just happen to change the way we do our security perimeter check every now and then. That's when we catch these guys. But we can tell they've been hiding out there for a few days.
How can they tell?
He said, because there's all the stuff. The guy has all the stuff.
Like they're camped out.
Yeah, okay. And he said that the concern among the pilots is that any one of these guys could have a 50 caliber rifle or something bigger.
Sure.
And they could snipe out not the pilot, but the plane before it can take off.
But couldn't you just fly a drone into that into that turbine?
This is what I'm getting at. So I thought of this when I saw this attack. The first thing I thought of was Edwards Air Force Base in Luke. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, like if I had a dozen or more drones. And by the way, at Luke, the planes are all parked on the field. They're all on the tarmac.
Bro, this is like solid metal.
That's what I'm saying. And you could knock out an entire couple squadrons of F-35s, in about an hour or less. And the base is not going to know what to do.
The whole thing fits in this.
That's right. And now just imagine that on a wider scale. Imagine that being done to our ports, shutting down our ports. This is what the Chinese are going, or their agents are going to do while they prepare to go into Taiwan. And we already can't take them on over Taiwan anymore. Now this is going to ensure we don't even try to deploy forces because we're going to be so busy cleaning up the messes they start here. 5,000 military-age Chinese men came into this country illegally during the Biden
more
regime.
Than that. If you watch me and JJ's show.
That's what we know about is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes. Michael Young says the same thing. He thinks it's like 25, 30,000 that got in.
Yeah, you could see them. Like if you go back and you look at those videos, like one thing, it's like being a cop or being a, Oxonian, or being any specific group of people, what you all look like. Like, I know what military guys look like. I know what they stand like. It doesn't matter which military it is. We're all the same. We have the same tapered haircuts. We either stand at parade, rest, hands behind the back or in front of our belt. And, you could just see where they're scrolling down those lines in like Arizona. And we had a whole episode. I'm like, JJ, stop the film. Those are military guys. Absolutely.
That's right. Absolutely. And just now imagine also a lot of these guys are coming in and they're trying to sneak in and join the Marine Corps and join as insider threats. That's a whole nother story I was seeing in California, Alameda. They found out a group of illegal Chinese had come in and they volunteered to join the U.S. Marine Corps. And it turns out they were PLA soldiers. Wow. So now you're not only getting the drone threat, but you have insider threats at every they have penetrated our country at every layer. LAPD.
Look at the LAPD. LAPD celebrated graduating their first class of illegal aliens in January of 2024.
The NYPD too also celebrated the Chinese. There's a whole. And then also.
And remember what I said about military police and command and control. Yep.
So they're going to kick over the hornet's nest here right before they go in or simultaneously with when they go in to Taiwan. And we already are not capable of stopping them anymore. We're definitely not going to be able to stop them or want to stop them if it's chaos city everywhere we turn in our backyards here.
We'll have to turn everything inward. I mean, let's not forget. So what a lot of this, but a lot of people don't realize that like the reserves are support roles, like the Army Reserve and everything. Those are support roles. They're not combat roles. It's the National Guard that's combat roles.
Yeah.
Okay. And the National Guard, the reason I didn't join the National Guard after I got out after 11 years is because they seemed to be more deployed than I was active duty.
I had a family member who left U.S. Army intelligence for National Guard thinking that it would be lighter. He ended up being deployed more to the Middle East than he was when he was active duty U.S. Army.
So what's that tell you? It tells you we need our National Guard for overseas stuff. Well, what happens if you
home front? But yes,
that's where they're supposed to be. But so then if you have to turn all those additional forces towards the home front, and then you're going to have the whole psychological hesitancy, with fighting your own neighbors. You don't know who are your neighbors. Right. That's the thing. And that's what I'm seeing like ramping up here.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
Focus us in while they attack that.
Right. That's exactly what's going to happen. And it's going to work, I think. I think it'll work. Unless Trump can get control, for instance, of the foreign policy apparatus in this country and the intelligence apparatus very quickly, unless he can stabilize the situation with Russia and Iran and focus us on China quickly. The Chinese, look, there's not much more we can do militarily and economically. The trade war, we'll see how this goes because China's got a lot of cards to play now that they didn't even during the first term of Trump. And that's because Biden let them get those cards. People don't realize how damaging Biden was to this country. He very well may have been the guy that set up the fall. And he handed over a bag of
quite a statement, but I agree with you.
I think that's where this is going. And, the guy I work for at the National Interest, the president of the board, he's a former diplomat. He's a great guy. He said we were having a Zoom staff meeting not long ago. And I gave him my theory, and I've written about this at the National Interest, about how, if we're the Soviet Union today, Biden was our Konstantin Chernenko. And he laughed, and then he looked at me over the Zoom, and he said, Brandon, let's just hope that Trump isn't our Gorbachev. Because look, Gorbachev did not set out to collapse the Soviet Union. He was trying to rejuvenate it. He was trying to make the Soviet Union great again, and it just so happened that his policies pushed him over the edge. My concern now, and I say this as somebody who likes and supports Trump, my concern now is possibly his policies might end up triggering something worse because we're going at it so fast and hard, but also he doesn't have total control over the system.
He doesn't, and I think the other, think about the way the Soviet Union fell too, was money.
And it's the same thing with us.
We didn't make any cuts. We added.
Yeah, well, this bill is a travesty, and this is I know Naomi has problems with Elon Musk, but he's 100% correct on this one.
He is 100% correct.
This is an effing travesty. This is not what people voted for. Well,
I don't think she's up to speed on the recent events, and I think she would probably agree with him.
I think she's right about I think she's right about the AI stuff.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You can't introduce those things.
Yeah, I think they got in I think they got in, the tech bros did, because they wanted access to all the data and all that, and they wanted greater control. I think she's right about that. I also think it's dangerous what's going on with Maha, and I think that they've ruined Maha.
Oh my God.
But this is all
well. Look, I've always the way I've always seen it is Maha is literally the Trojan horse, for the globalists, because all the policies lean that way.
Right. This is my point. This is all part of the same pattern. So you could talk about China. You can talk about the intelligence community being in a state of coup against Trump. You could talk about Maha. It's all the same effing types of people. It's the same kinds of benefits why they're doing what they're doing. It's compelling them to behave this way. It's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. And if you understand that, then you understand the blob that you're really up against.
You should watch my episode with Dr. Henry Ely about this. Because I was embarrassed. I went on Naomi's show, and I'm so focused on overseas stuff, or granular stuff that we have a show together now called In the Lair.
I know. I saw the first episode. Right.
Oh, good. Did you like it?
Yes.
I shouldn't ask you that. I'm sorry.
No, I tweeted at you guys, and you responded to me when I said it was a great first episode.
It's great because I love having her as an interlocutor, but I usually only get her for about a half an hour at a time, and like anyone who has a spouse, it's like, wait, I need 10 more minutes to make my point and land this plane, and you never get it, because the kid wakes up or the dog attacks a bear or whatever. But the thing is, that's what I love about that show is like we get to really be each other's interlocutors, and we're locked into an hour. But the Dr. Ely episode, so I didn't really know who Casey Means was, because she's covering that, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll cover this. Right. And then all of a sudden I see this Politico article that they threatened one of our sponsors. That Callie Means did.
Yes. It was Emerald who put me onto that story. I didn't know anything about it until she was talking.
Well, here's the crazy thing: Legacy Media did not roll with that. That's a huge. That should have been a huge story for Legacy Media to go after Maha/MAGA, and they didn't. And that's where I got really suspicious.
Right.
And, I think, as I said In the Lair, I don't know if you heard my analogy. I said, look, I don't think Callie Means is out to subjugate Callie Means is the brother of Casey Means, for those that don't know, for the audience. And I was like,
I forget that it's not you and I.
I know, we do forget that sometimes, but it's like, but, I don't think he's out to subjugate the human race, or he's some deep state
money and
operative.
Power. That's all he wants. It's money and power.
Well, the way I said it, I said he's one of those guys that wants to, he's in DC, wants to grab DC by its ankles, hold it upside down, and shake out all its loose change.
Most of those guys do there.
Yeah, because he advocated, like Macri, the FDA guy, suddenly out of the blue was on Jillian Michaels' show. Jillian Michaels, who's in business with Casey and Levels, and said, oh yeah, we got to look at hallucinogens and magic mushrooms, for PTSD. And then if you saw my post, I'm like, oh, as it so happens, Callie Means was promoting mushroom companies, and so it goes. But so yeah, I agree with you to bring it back. I agree with you. That's a huge, in my opinion, that is, I think, and I've always thought this, and you've heard me advocate for the breaking up of HHS. It's a monopoly within our government.
Well, I think we need to break up most of the government.
Big time. I totally agree with you.
All the bureaucracies need to be smashed into 1,000 pieces. But that's sort of where I'm at. And I think that the bottom line is one other thing, and this will be the last point.
Yes, please. No, you have the mic. I want to interrupt you.
Trump is, whether he can do it successfully or not remains to be seen. But this is why Trump is a man of destiny, because he's in the moment now. It's a fulcrum point. Mm-hmm. He is resetting the entire world order in a way that hasn't been done in 80 years, not since World War II. And he's doing it without a major war yet, forcing that to come about. He's doing it using economic policy. He's resetting the world system. And he's resetting economics. He's resetting the culture in many respects here, and that's great. And he's resetting trade, and he's trying all these things. He's trying. I don't know if he's going to be successful. This is what he's trying, and he's also resetting foreign policy. And we have moved out of, sticking to what I know most is foreign policy and national security. Right. We have moved out of the unipolar world order that existed after the Cold War when America was the only superpower in the world. We have moved out of that, and we have now entered, however begrudgingly, into a tripolar system. It's United States, China, and Russia predominantly, with a bunch of other powers rising up to be middle powers below them. And that's a very different game you have to play than the unipolar system, than the bipolar system of Soviet versus America. This is what he is, and we've not exercised those multipolar, tripolar muscles since before the Second World War.
It's been a while, right?
It's been about 100 years almost.
I guess you would call us, after the Soviet Union fell, we would be what, the hyperpower, I think is.
We were the hegemon. The French used to call us the hyperpower. That was a point of derision for them. To us, it was a typical French.
Things were much peaceful during the Cold War, during the bipolar era.
In many respects, they were. And, people forget that up until the end of the First World War, the world was multipolar. It was ruled by a series of European and British monarchs, and America was very much a bit player on that stage. We were not the big power. Anyway, though, so I think that's what Trump is doing. Now, it remains to be seen if any one man can reset the system the way he's trying to, at so many different balls in the air, juggling those. The whole thing could collapse on him, and we could all get taken down. But this is what he's dealing with right now. This is why he was trying to break the deep state, as we call it, up, because it is a byproduct, putting it very, very politely, not ascribing in this case any nefariousness, which of course you and I know there is nefariousness, but even if it wasn't nefarious, the intelligence community as it's structured and the Defense Department as it's structured, the national security state, is a byproduct of 1947. At the end of the day, it is a 1947 National Security Act creation, and it exists still very much according to the paradigm of that era. We are well beyond that era, and it is not well suited to this era, and it is fighting back at Trump because it knows it's not well suited, but it can't let go, and it can't reform because then it's going to lose its power.
Right.
And so that's what he's up against.
Well said. Yeah,
and so all the stuff, when I say like we got to reset the strategy with China, where we might have to just let them take that first island chain. And I'm not saying this because I want that to happen.
No, I'm with you.
But we are now, it's a new world system, and we have to start drawing new lines the way we did after World War II, the way we kind of did after the Cold War. And with Russia's the same thing. And by the way, as much as I don't trust Iran, we're trying to do it with Iran and Qatar and these Islamist groups. That's just the name of the game now, because America's not the dominant power anymore. It is one of at least three, and it might actually be in the current form, unless Trump can get these economic reforms through. We're a declining power versus the two other powers.
We are.
So this is a problem. You don't want to be taking them on all at once if you're a declining power going through these once-in-a-generation reforms. You've got to focus inward for a little bit in a positive way.
I totally agree with you. And I would remind people, and the reason why we didn't get to every topic, we never do. But
you have to have me back.
No, let's just keep going all week. But the thing is, people there's always, I think, subconsciously this idea that like everyone's waiting for America to make the move, but they're making moves. You got the BRICS nations right now heading to Brazil to talk about unseating the US dollar as the prime currency. That's a huge deal.
That's right.
And that can change everyone's lives.
Look, South Korea, South Korea, first of all, I just want to say something about South Korea. It's a terrible...
and just so everyone knows, they just had their elections, yesterday.
They hacked it. It was all centralized computing. It was, what the Democrats wanted to do here. The Chinese... But I will also say that South Korean society has never been ubiquitously pro-American or ubiquitously pro having 50,000.
Have you been there?
I know it well, and so
I know it well, and I've been there, and we're the reason they're there, still there, and they treated us like crap. It's the only.
So
it's the only country I went to when I was in the military that I didn't like.
Yes.
Because they were so rude.
That's right. And so my friend Colonel Mills, who's been on Bannon all week, and
I like Colonel Mills. He's great.
And I'm supposed to be talking to him tomorrow morning. We'll see. But the point is that, he's very passionate, and I love it. And he's right. It's wrong what happened there. But at the end of the day, the South Koreans were due for a regime shift, whether it was goosed along by the Chinese or not. This whole paradigm of, marching behind America was not going to last. It just wasn't going to last.
No.
And we need to take that into account. And we need to realize that now the world is shifting away. It's not necessarily pro-China, but it's just not going to be so mindlessly pro-American. And that's okay. And in fact, actually, if we're smart, we can use that to our advantage.
How?
We should be, well, think about it. Everything South Korea does, so much of it is dependent on a direct relationship with the United States. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a relationship where it's equal, where, okay, we're giving them something, but they're giving us lots of money and building us up. That's part of it. But it's a very unequal trade relationship. This was all of Trump's first term. This was a big fight he had with Gary Cohn and these guys. Trump was right. It's a very unfair relationship. It's very one-sided. Same thing with Germany and the rest of Europe. It's one-sided. So in a way, it's actually going to work to our favor. Plus, it might prevent us from getting into a massive war that we cannot afford right now with, say,
But isn't that a major danger to have a unified Korean peninsula?
Well, I don't think it's going to be unified like that, but it'll be a massive, it's going to be a headache. It's going to be a massive headache for us, but this is the world as it is. Nixon said this to Dick Helms. This is right before Dick Helms had him pushed out. He said, I try to accept the world as it is, not as I want it to be. And,
good impression.
He's right. Well, I love Nixon. Nixon is like my favorite president, but he was right. You have to accept the world as it is. And the world as it is that, unfortunately, American power is waning, and we need to start consolidating, rebuilding, and after we do the rebuild, then we can start again going back and saying, okay, we're gonna go back to being whatever. But we can't do that right now. And with, like, for instance, Israel, the controversy right now is foreign aid. Well, probably both for our own benefit, but also the Israeli benefit in the long run. It's good that they stand on their own. It's good that they understand limits of power, because let's face it, the reason they're acting so madly so committed to such extreme courses of action right now is because they think Big Brother is waiting behind them to come in and save them.
Yeah.
And so if we were to say we're resetting our foreign aid, at least we're not going to give you the way that we did. It's not because we're anti-Semitic. Trump's the most pro-Israeli president we've had since Truman.
Let's just call it tough love.
It's tough love. You got to grow up, man. You got to stand. And then in growing up, you learn, well, I can't take on 4 enemies at once because I'm a country the size of Rhode Island. So I have to pick my battles, and I have to be smarter. And that's okay. That's a good thing, because America might not always be able to be there. We're barely able to be there right now. So that's my spiel.
Brandon, that one of the best things you've ever said. You must be an excellent dad, because it's like, all I think of the way you said that is like enabling parents and their kids turn out to be assholes.
It's true.
And it's when you pull it back.
I grew up with, because I went to a very she prep.
Half of my siblings were like that. The ones my dad enabled, God rest his soul, the ones he enabled all went to prison. There's 9 of us, so we're not like a thug family.
Or they failure to thrive. That's how I put it. It's just
they can't act without that refill.
Right. So when you cut them off, they have to stand up on their own and be a man.
They do, and that's why I left my house, and the brothers that were successful left. I left 13 days after I graduated, because I didn't want the United States to keep refilling my my missiles and my bullets.
That's right.
So, Brandon, really quickly, there's just one comment I want you to address, because I
don't have my glasses on. I can't read it.
I'll read it to you. That's fine. Let me see.
Who's it from?
Trying to find it here. Where'd it go? Here we go. It says, so Trump issues a travel ban on several countries, but not China or Russia. And I just don't get it. Rory Teal, regular viewer, good person. Okay. But I think that's a decent question.
Hold on. So Trump issues a travel ban on several countries, but not China. And I don't
know if he did, but
I don't know either. Is he talking about something that happened or something? I don't know.
I have no context, so I don't know if something happened.
Is that from the first term that he's talking about?
I'll tell you what. Hey, Rory Teal, do me a favor. Just shoot me an email,
or you can just get me on Twitter because I'm
get Brandon on Twitter. As a matter of fact,
to give you more context. And this other one is mindlessly pro-American. I guess this individual name.
Oh, you saw that one. I wasn't even going to read that one because it was just
11.
Smoking Hot 11. Well, let me put it on the screen. All right, Smoking Hot, you got on there. I don't know. Smoking Hot is like,
Smoking Hot 11. Okay.
50 Cent Army guy in a Chinese prison.
So mindlessly pro-American. What I was talking about is, in many cases, it's obviously an AI image. In many cases, let's take these off. In many cases, American allies, and Bannon says this all the time, I wrote about this for years, American allies in the post-Cold War era behave less and less like allies and more like vassal states. Yep. And that's a problem because, first of all, we're not supposed to be an empire. And second of all, this gets us back to the codependency or the dependency issue, the pathway dependency, where these countries then start doing things really stupidly that they ordinarily wouldn't do because there's no moral hazard for them because they know, hey, big brother America is going to come in and bail us out. We have Wall Street already that thinks like that. We don't need to have 30 plus allies around the world who think like that. And so some of these countries need to start standing up. That's what I think.
Hey, by the way, I got to put this on the screen. So Smoking Hot, or should I say member of the 50 Cent Army, which is the as you know, the people that get paid to do. So here's the profile. Excuse the vulgarity of the picture, the AI picture, but for those who want to spot bots, like, you don't need a fancy program. Look at the followers, but look at the date. Not following anyone you're following, they just pop on. We get these all the time.
Oh, look.
Yes, I know. And then I always check to see who's following them. So smoking. So Brandon, you don't think Smoking Hot's a real girl that my viewers can date?
No, I think it's a Wu Mao army.
It's some 55-year-old guy from Wuhan who's stuck in a prison sentence for crossing the road at the wrong time.
Low social credit score. This is how he's getting his social credit score up.
Exactly. Well, Brandon, I should let you go. I'll play the outro video, but for everyone that wants, let me get rid of Smoking Hot. As tough as it is, it's tearing at my heartstrings to say goodbye to my friend Smoking Hot, whose real name is Tom. Over there in the Hubei province. Oh, wait, I got guilted. Well, you haven't been following me since before April 2025, because that's when your profile was set up. So now, if you are someone I know and this is your new stealth account, then shoot me an email. Sorry to be rude, but by the way, to answer the question, mindlessly pro-American, first of all, any American and every American should always be pro-American. Second of all the people I know, Brandon is the most, I'm not going to say mindful in the, emotional intelligence sense. I'm going to say in the most research sense. Like, just listen to any part of this podcast and you'll see this man knows what he's talking about. And he puts his money where his mouth is. He's not about winning or anything. He's about sharing what he knows. That's why, love him like a brother, because he doesn't want to be the smartest guy in the room. He wants to make everyone the smartest person in the room. So because
I share the intelligence, I don't
hoard it.
By the way, I see you have a guy here, David P. Goldman, under You Might Like. He's a dear friend. David is former editor of mine at the Asia Times. He used to write under the pseudonym of Spangler. You might want to follow him. He's phenomenal.
Wait, are you saying this to me, or are you reading this?
You. Well, anybody.
Okay, yeah.
I see his name popped up as people you might like, and you might, for your account, might want to follow him.
Absolutely.
He is now, as of a week ago, he's one of the head honchos working with Michael Anton at the policy planning staff for the State Department. So, but he's phenomenal. He's wonderful, and he is a China expert extraordinaire.
Absolutely. Just I'll definitely follow him right
Goldman,
away.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
All right. Well, look, on that note, everyone, if they want to follow Brandon, please do. You learn so much every time. At We the Brandon on X. And where else do you want them to find you?
You can just look me up on Amazon and buy my books, or you can find me at the National Interest. Just type in my name. It usually pops up, from what I understand.
National Interest. Or you can just, demand he return to investigate everything and grace us with his knowledge, which is awesome.
On the show, I think so. I will be back.
Yeah, no, we got to do it more because we got a lot to get through. So Brandon, we will see you soon. Hopefully, we'll see you in person soon. We'll come to you.
Hopefully, yeah.
Got to bring the kids to Florida.
You know where I live. Yeah,
I know where you live. But yeah, absolutely. And thanks for coming on short notice. Yes, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's do a part 2. We got a lot more to get through. Absolutely. And I will definitely repost your stuff. And thank you so much. Best to your family.
Have a good night, sir.
You have a good night too.
Bye-bye.
All right. I'm going to keep going. I'll talk to you later. I'm going to keep going on. All right. Okay. So everyone, that was Brandon Weichert. Great always to have him on there. And by the way, for the person who is going by the name Smokinot, if you do follow me under other platforms, then by all means, let me know who you are. But to us, when we see a new profile with 9 followers and they're taking a shot at the guest, it looks a little cagey. So, if you are a regular follower, by all means, let me know who you are, and we'll throw you back on the stage. In the meantime, I do want to, as the outro, I do want to play some of the things that we discussed while Brandon was here. I meant to put it in the cold open. I have the cold open. It's not finished, but I'm just going to let it run as we play this out. Wait, hold on. But in the meantime, let me take some comments really quickly. But before I do that, let me just address our sponsors. We have the sponsor that has, honestly, I'm pretty sure saved my life with the amount of tick bites and everything else that happens up here in New York and Massachusetts, the home of Lyme disease, which just is crippling. That would definitely be the Wellness Company. And so I'm so proud to have them as a sponsor. And let me put their banner up. But you just want to go to dailyclouthealth.com and, check out all of their products, because this company is nothing but good to us and nothing but good to our health. And it's just so nice that, I even had my dog had 20 ticks after being up here in New York. We got to Salem. My son's looking at him. He's like, Dad, what is this big thing? I said, that's a tick, and I had to basically shave his fur, and there were so many ticks, and I don't let him outside for a long time just because of ticks. Sick of ticks, got to stop them. They seem like they're not even from this planet, or like they're almost indestructible. It's weird. But the point is, the way you fight Lyme disease is doxycycline. Okay, I'm not a doctor, so, take your doctor's advice, of course. But what I will say is this. In the Wellness Company emergency medical kit, which is the blue kit when you go to the website, it's just so nice to have pre-prescribed doxycycline, because this poor dog, man, it's like, I don't want my little dog to get Lyme disease. And he just 20 ticks. I mean, there's a good chance he'd get it, and dogs can get Lyme disease. So I called the Wellness Company. They said, unfortunately, we're not, they answered the phone right away, but they're like, we're not veterinarians. We can't, give you that advice, ethically or legally. They said, but, you can call us back and, just look it up. So I called a few other people and everything. So I found out you can give smaller doses of doxy to dogs just in case, to prevent Lyme disease. So I did, and he's fine. He might not have had it, but 20 ticks is a good chance, did. And then myself, because just today, like I look down, I'm very careful about ticks. You can walk outside here, you look, there's like 5 of them crawling up your legs. It's disgusting. We're in the Hudson Valley. I look, and there's a tick just right in my arm. And so first thing I did was I got my wellness company emergency contagion, my emergency medical kit, the blue kit. This is the contagion kit, which also has, I believe, doxycycline in it. And thank God we got like 100 pills in there. And it's just nice to have that kind of access to, life-saving medications or potentially life-saving medications at your fingertips. And so, I can't say enough about them. And they're responsive, and it's just nice to have that security. So go to dailyclouthealth.com, use promo code dailyclout, get 10% off. But the biggest reason I want you to go there is you just don't know what's going to be available tomorrow. You just don't know what you're going to be allowed to buy in stores tomorrow. Don't forget, they were trying to get multivitamins as prescription drugs during the Biden administration. Stock up on this stuff. It could save your life. Amoxicillin, that could save you from a minor splinter that turns into a major infection if you don't have access to these antibiotics and these sort of things. The doxycycline's a big one with me because when I was in 1st Special Forces, which dealt with Southeast Asia, that was our go-to drug. It pretty much vaporizes anything. Are there side effects? Not that I know of, but again, if there's a side effect, I'd rather have that than Lyme disease or any other, godforsaken thing I might catch. So check out the Wellness Company, great company, and you won't be sorry. And then, of course, our other sponsor is Native Path. Now, Native Path is here. We are just hammering the collagen constantly. My wife and I, it goes in our coffee, it goes in everything. So why is collagen important? Well, collagen is important because it's teeth, nails, hair, everything. It's the mortar of your body. You can scan that barcode, check it out. We have a subscription to the collagen. It's odorless, tasteless. Collagen is a protein that your body needs, and your body stops producing after 25 years old. So try it for a month. Tell us what you think. But I tried it for a month. Aches, pains, everything, they go away as long as you're doing other things like moving. But, the collagen peptides from Native Path, you want to go to, take down that banner there. There we go. You want to go to getnativepath.com/dailyclout, and they're great. And then the other thing I like to start my day with, Native Hydrate, especially now this summertime. You ever have those long nights, or any night in the summertime, the AC might go out. Brandon could speak to this. It happened to him last time. And you wake up and you just wish you had a Gatorade, just something to replenish you. What I love about Native Hydrate from Native Path is it's full of all the electrolytes, amino acids you need, and there's no chemicals. It's all natural. It's, carbs, because I know that's important to people. 1 carb per serving. 1 scoop, I usually fill up at a minimum one of these, which I'm drinking literally Native Path right now. And I kind of had that moment the other day. I couldn't find my Native Hydrate. I was like saying to Naomi, I'm like, what'd you do with the Native Hydrate? You're hoarding it. She's like, no, I'm not, but it's great. And it just replenishes you. So, these small things in your health, just kind of, especially if you start getting past 50 like I am, they really just kind of can make your day from a good day, from a bad day to a good day, from a bad morning to a good morning to a productive morning. And we need to have productive mornings as much as we can, especially the older we get, and especially the more chaotic the world gets. So check out getnativepath.com/dailycloud. Great company. We really, really appreciate them. And we hope you appreciate this show. And we're not saying buy their products to keep the show on the air. We'll stay on the air anyways. But buy these products because we use them and we know they work. Check them out and focus on your health, because we need all you guys in this fight. The fight is not over. I think, honestly, we're entering the worst phase of it as we go forward. We need healthy bodies, healthy minds, and we need even the ability to perform first aid on yourselves with like the wellness company's products. So getnativepath.com/dailyclout, and let us know what you think. Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to close this out. First, let me check all the comments and make sure. Okay. So Blue Wolf, I just want to say hello to Blue Wolf. Good to see you. Don't worry about the grammar at all. I can vouch for the wellness company. Joined up with them when they first started. Excellent service and excellent products. They really are great. I mean, they really are. I know Cousin Ernie was on here earlier. I'm not sure if he still is. Evening Blue Wolf. I love this community, the way you guys all like hang out and know each other now. So greetings, Brian. Brandon, damn sorry I didn't know you were on. Honestly, I'm trying to get back on the schedule of Wednesday at 8 o'clock, Blue Wolf. Got a little late today because, well, I'll just be honest with you. I'm starting to really, I always underestimate how long it takes to set up a show, especially if you're a one-man band like me. So I was trying to do the cold open and just trying to find a topic that is going to be informative and useful. Like, I just don't want to be one of those shows that repeats, the news and the headlines that everyone else is repeating and giving my opinion on them. Like, I'm trying to look for those things that like are affecting our world and no one's covering, those things that are flying under the radar. That's what we focus on. I wish I'd reached out to Brandon earlier. We were going to do a Tiananmen Square anniversary show today. Unfortunately, my very dear friend, Dr. Yang Jianli, he just wasn't up to it. He's had some issues with his throat. We're going to be talking to him next week or in a few weeks, as well as my friend Jennifer, who, they both come from China, but tonight's their night. This is a night of remembrance, or yesterday was with Tiananmen Square. So that was the plan, and then thank God for Brandon, because I reached out to Brandon. I'm like, dude, we have to refocus on the CCP. And he's like, boom, 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 sends me articles. He's like, I'll come on. And I'm like, great. So I was throwing this together, within 4 hours, but that's just not enough time to make the good cold open and, get up to date on the latest. So we'll do better. Okay. So we'll do better. And maybe I'll start giving myself 2 days of prep per show. But in the meantime, thank God for Brandon, because he's just a book of knowledge, and we're so happy to have him. And his kind of knowledge is like actionable intelligence, so that's great. Anyways, that aside, I do want to say hello again to Rory Teal. Shoot me your question; we will get back to you on it, or just hit us up on the next show, which should be we're trying to stick to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, at 8 o'clock. This topic freaks me out. Yeah, so we're going back earlier in the show, but it freaks me out. But, I always say face the fear, like we all have to, because fear feeds on time. And the more time you take to look at it, the worse it gets. Nothing's as bad as it seems, so just that's been my experience. Things can be absolutely horrible, but they're never as horrible as you imagine they are once you're taking a peek at them. Oh, thanks, Blue Wolf. I appreciate that. He says, no worries, Brian. I kind of like the randomness of your schedule. Yeah, man. I mean, it's, I appreciate that. But beside the fact that I'm hunting for the right topic, I also move constantly. I'm always between 3 addresses, 3 states. I've got a kind of a tween aged kid right now who's in football and, dealing with girls and romance and all that. So I'm trying to be a good dad. And then, of course, I have a wonderful adult daughter who, also we have a very close relationship and, try to take care of everyone. Of course, my wonderful wife, my wonderful stepkids as well. It's a lot, but you guys are worth it. And that's why I do this, because I want to share everything I know. And people who are in my friends like Brandon, who are, wonderful and incredible analysts, try to get those things to you and so you can act on them. With that said, I'm going to play the rough outro. It was supposed to be the intro or the cold open video. I'm going to play that. It's about 20 minutes. Stick around for it. If not, catch it on the recording. But I want you, it's kind of a summary of all the things we talked about. I tried to piece together some news articles, but definitely watch at the end about the drones. I spliced in some DJI stuff. I spliced in some of my own drone experience. This is really serious stuff, and I want to leave you on this note. We talked about recognizing the threat, what you can do. Keep in mind that this hit in Russia, because it was 3,000 miles into Russia from the Ukrainians. Now, as a drone operator, longtime drone operator, I was thinking, well, I don't know any drone except maybe military grade, which are still the size of Cessnas, that can go 4,000, 3,000 miles. There's barely any planes that can do that. And what was great about this animated thing at the end, which I didn't make, I just pulled it off the internet, really explained it. Brandon confirmed that. They just drove semi-trailer trucks stocked with racks of automated drones, fully charged, ready to go, and they parked them in the woods about a mile away. So the reason I included the DJI advertisements is because there's one new one they have that can deliver a payload of like 30 pounds. It's like the size of like a good size moving box over mountains, hills, and valleys. And these things are available to anyone. So the danger of that is with the container ships, and you'll see the way this all plays together. There's so many containers in our ports. Any one of them could be full of these attack swarms of drones. It's insane. So, I encourage you to watch this video, this kind of like a mashed together video of headlines. And it covers all the things we talked about, but especially the drone warfare is amazing. It's awesome in the truest sense of the word, not good awesome, just it inspires awe in the deadliness and the simplicity of it, because really what they're doing is they're taking this actual model here, okay, the Mavic, which, as you can see, folds out but can fit into a pocket. Now this one looks a little beat up because I'm changing the gimbal, but I have this skin that I put on it can actually fragment or like disperse radar, and that's why I bought it. I've tested it. The propellers go there. This thing weighs about maybe 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. This thing can fly, like 2-3 miles from me. Now think of that. If you buy farmland next to a base, or forget about a base, just a neighborhood, you want to cause terror, you can fly this thing up in the sky. I can attach something up to about the amount of a mortar shell on this and arm it and send this thing as kamikaze. And this one now is cheap. This is like first gen. It still flies. It's a workhorse. But, from my transmitter, I can fly this 2.5 miles out, 2.5 miles back easily. And then if I want to recon, this is a newer one. This here, this is called the Avatar. And I got some of its footage in the video. This little guy here doesn't do really good in strong winds, but if I stay below a certain amount, and God, I hope that's not a tick. Basically, I can go very far with this. It's tiny. And you'll see in the video I'm kind of like, at our other property, just flying it around. And this is one of those first person ones. You put this on and control it with this. Okay, just moving it around, all that. All of this stuff, like I did an experiment the other day where I launched it from my SUV and just opened up the moonroof, sent it out, and this thing can go 2 miles out as well, super fast, has a larger sound signature. But think about it, recon, or, just coat this thing with timer charge, C4. So what's that mean? It means, don't only look left and right. Don't look out just for the CIA or the FBI or whatever government deep state you're worried about. Worry about the threat that's coming right in over the horizon and right in over the tree line, okay? Like I told many people who became my clients, like I told my wife when I met her, She was worried about like who would have reason to hurt her for political reasons. She hired me as her initial, get rid of her stalker threat, bodyguard / blah, blah, blah. And I also told her, I said, well, don't forget about regular crime. Don't forget about the threat that has no brain. It just hurts people. So, put a 360-degree bubble around you and learn about all of these threats. You want to think you're being spied on? Go to Amazon, check out what kind of spy cameras they have and what they look like. You want to protect yourself from drones? Start figuring out some counter-drone strategies. A really good one, 12 gauge. It won't stop a swarm, but it'll stop one of them. Another really, so just, and the reason I own these things is obviously I was doing PI work, but it's also good to own them so you understand how they work. Once you understand how they work, they're not that scary and they have tons of vulnerabilities. And the ones in Ukraine are not sophisticated. Just up, you'll see in the video here, they're literally duct taping in some cases a mortar shell to a Mavic and just sending that thing in. It's crazy in the simplicity, but also the effectiveness of these weapons. It's pretty wild. So anyways, I could go on all night about this. We got to keep going on this. We got to do some longer episodes. Brandon will come back. He loves coming on here and I love having him. So, we'll leave it at that. But so in a nutshell, remember, are we at war? Yes, we are at war. If you don't believe me, prove me wrong, because then at least I know you'll be researching and you'll discover we're at war. Why is it important to me? Because if all of you are defending yourselves and I'm defending myself and we're protecting our own little home, then we have a network of hard target homes. That becomes a network and a community of hard targets, and that expands out to be a stronger country that can survive despite so much stacked against us. So thank you for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it, and we will talk soon. Watch for more, and don't forget to investigate everything. Thanks. Have a great night, and good to see everyone. All right. I will talk to you soon. All right. And by the way, hey, Cousin Ernie, I see you. Okay. So let me play this video and I'll start it from the beginning for you. So this is a summary of everything we covered.
And down.
That's me.
International military cooperation.
There we go.
The Joint Air Force exercise. 5. Global defense news and analysis. Today, we delve into a significant development in international military cooperation, the Joint Air Force exercise between China and Egypt, highlighting the performance of China's J-10C fighters and their implications on global defense dynamics. Chinese J-10C fighters impress U.S. ally, Egypt in landmark joint exercise. In a historic move, China and Egypt conducted their first ever joint Air Force training exercise, Eagles of Civilization 2025, from April 17 to May 4th, 2025. Hosted at a major Egyptian air base near the Gulf of Suez, this exercise marked the first time China deployed a complete Air Force package to Africa, making it a milestone in Beijing's growing defense diplomacy footprint. Advanced Chinese air power showcased China's People's Liberation Army Air Force, PLAAF, sent a formidable fleet that included J-10C multi-role fighters, KJ-500 airborne early warning aircraft, YY-20 aerial refueling tankers. The Egyptian Air Force contributed MiG-29 fighter jets, and the joint drills included complex missions like air superiority combat, suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD, search and rescue operations, mixed formation tactics, mid-air refueling missions. One particularly notable achievement was China's YY-20 tanker refueling Egyptian MiG-29s in flight, a strong symbol of emerging interoperability between both nations' air forces. Symbolic flyover at the pyramids. In a striking display of partnership, Chinese and Egyptian aircraft performed low-altitude formation flights over the pyramids of Giza, capturing international media attention and showcasing the professionalism of both militaries. Combat credibility. J-10C's recent performance in South Asia. The J-10C's reputation
Pakistan is actively exploring the acquisition of China's HQ-19 air defense system, a move that signals its commitment to strengthening its missile defense capabilities. The HQ-19, often dubbed the Chinese THAAD, is a high-altitude, exo-atmospheric interception system designed to counter medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles. This potential purchase is seen as part of Islamabad's broader efforts to modernize its air defense infrastructure in response to emerging regional threats. Currently, Pakistan operates a layered air defense system that includes the HQ-9B long-range surface-to-air missile and the LY-80 medium-range system. While effective, these systems primarily focus on defending against enemy aircraft and cruise missiles, rather than advanced ballistic missile threats. The HQ-19, however, offers interceptor capabilities that can neutralize enemy missile threats in their terminal phase, making it a critical addition to Pakistan's defensive strategy. One of the driving factors behind Pakistan's interest in the HQ-19 is India's rapid missile modernization, which includes the deployment of the Agni-V intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, and work on hypersonic weapons. Given the evolving threat landscape, Pakistan aims to bridge the technological gap by acquiring more sophisticated defense systems. The HQ-19's high-altitude tracking and kinetic kill technology could significantly enhance Pakistan's ability to deter missile attacks. Beyond its missile defense function, integrating the HQ-19 would require Pakistan to upgrade its C4ISR, command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance infrastructure. This would involve deploying advanced radar stations, real-time data sharing networks, and AI-powered threat analysis systems. Such an upgrade could improve interoperability between Pakistan's Air Force, Army, and Navy, leading to a more comprehensive national defense strategy. Diplomatically, this potential acquisition strengthens Pakistan's strategic partnership with China, which has been a key defense supplier over the years. Beijing has previously provided J-10C fighter jets, VT-4 tanks, and Type 054-8P frigates to Pakistan, cementing their military cooperation. The HQ-19 deal, if finalized, would further enhance Pakistan's reliance on Chinese military technology and deepen their defense collaboration. However, Pakistan's exploration of the HQ-19 may prompt regional concerns, particularly in India. Experts predict that this development could contribute to an arms race in South Asia, pushing India to accelerate its anti-ballistic missile programs or invest further in hypersonic glide vehicles. The strategic balance between Pakistan and India has long been a delicate matter, and any shift in defense capabilities often results in countermeasures from the opposing side. From a financial perspective, acquiring an advanced system like the HQ-19 would require significant investment. Pakistan's defense budget is already stretched across various modernization projects, including its J-35A stealth fighter acquisition and naval expansion efforts. Balancing defense expenditures with economic priorities will be crucial in determining whether Islamabad proceeds with this high-cost purchase. Ultimately, the exploration of the HQ-19 represents Pakistan's efforts to adapt to evolving security challenges and fortify its defenses against potential missile threats. If the acquisition proceeds, it would mark a major leap in Pakistan's missile defense capabilities, positioning it as one of the few countries with an exo-atmospheric interception system. The implications of this move will not only affect Pakistan's military readiness but also influence the strategic dynamics of South Asia for years to come.
多项数据链修正以及末端雷达制导这样的多种制导方式，最大的攻击距离可以超过145千米，可以装备在猛龙、枭龙等战机，是中远程超视距空中打击的杀手锏。
The Ukrainian military has been outgunned, struggling for months with a shortage of ammunition and artillery shells. What's helped it hold back Russian forces was replacing conventional weapons with commercial technology. Drones that have taken to the skies over the front lines in Ukraine are basically the same platforms for sale in electronics stores, but turned into weapons of war. For as little as a few $100s, a small over-the-counter drone equipped with an explosive can destroy military equipment worth millions of dollars. Alexander Kamyshin is Ukraine's Minister of Strategic Industries.
This kind of things are significantly cheaper than other classic warfare tools. So actually that's the most efficient way how we can win this war.
Ukraine is betting big on drones. From a few domestic manufacturers just 2 years ago, there are now more than 200 companies churning out an estimated 150,000 drones a month. Ukraine's president set a goal in December to produce 1 million drones domestically in 2024. It's already past that, headed for 2 million. The ramping up and development that's gone on would normally take years.
This war has pushed that research, development, testing, and evaluation cycle into a matter of weeks, days, and sometimes hours.
From the first years of the conflict, both sides used aerial drones for surveillance. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, the evolution has sped up, from drones simply dropping bombs to first-person view FPV drones equipped with munitions that explode on impact. Drone units share videos online, both for fundraising and to instill fear. They want the enemy to know what they can do.
This war has been tick-tocked in a way that no other conflict has.
Ukraine has also developed long-range drones, equipping small aircraft with 300-kilogram warheads. It's allowed Ukraine to target energy and military infrastructure inside Russia.
Well, they shell us deep inside my country daily. We shell them as well.
Now, militaries around the world are watching the use of drones in the Ukraine war. The U.S. recently canceled the development of a new attack and reconnaissance helicopter. Even after spending $2 billion on the project, it decided the helicopter's role on the battlefield could be done by aircraft without people on board.
Delivery to remote locations has always been difficult, inefficient, and perilous. Today, we bring you a brand new possibility. Introducing DJI Flycart 30, an aerial delivery drone. Flycart 30 is designed for efficient cargo transportation, carrying a max payload of 30 kilograms with dual batteries, a delivery range of 16 kilometers, and a max speed of 20 meters per second. Delivery is now simple and efficient, no longer restricted by physical geography. Flycart withstands extreme situations and handles difficult operations, allowing you to confidently deliver to harsh environments. It supports 2 payload configurations, cargo mode and winch mode, to meet varying delivery needs. Its spacious cargo case weighs the payload during the loading process to prevent overloading and ensure flight safety. Switch to the winch system if the drone's intended delivery destination does not have a safe landing site. Once the drone arrives at the destination, select the drop point with AR projection. A single tap automatically lowers the payload. When the payload touches down, the winch system releases and retracts for accurate, non-contact delivery. The winch system intelligently senses the payload and adjusts attitude quickly to counteract swinging. Even for long-range tasks, Flycart 30 is more than capable. The 20-kilometer DJI O3 transmission, coupled with 4G enhanced transmission and an FPV gimbal camera, ensure clear and stable live feeds under various operational scenarios. Flycart 30 also supports dual operator mode for one drone. Pilots in 2 different locations can transfer control of the drone with a single tap, extending the operating range even further. The aircraft is equipped with front and rear active phased array radars and a dual binocular vision system designed to accurately sense terrain with multi-directional obstacle sensing in various weather conditions, day or night. Its dual battery system features multi-level redundancy, hot swapping, and quick dual battery charging in parallel to enable continuous operations. In extreme scenarios, the integrated parachute will automatically deploy, reducing the risk of personnel injury and property damage. The DJI Pilot 2 app introduces brand new functions for delivery control. The app lets users configure alternative landing sites and record flight routes, enabling automatic repeat flights for improved safety and efficiency. The newly launched cloud platform DJI Delivery Hub offers a 2.5D base map and facilitates efficient operation planning, full operation status monitoring, and centralized team resource management. Flycart 30 provides a comprehensive airborne delivery solution that is straightforward, efficient, and safe. Fly over mountains, valleys, and rivers, and ascend into a new era of aerial delivery.
With its mix of flagship imaging and exceptional portability, the DJI Mavic series has never stopped empowering creators. Now, it's time for another bold leap forward. Introducing Mavic 3 Pro and Mavic 3 Pro Cine. Pro and Pro Cine both feature 3 cameras for ultra-dynamic imaging. It starts with a 4/3 CMOS Hasselblad camera for outstanding image quality and color science.
对于风光拍摄而言，好风景往往稍纵即逝。4/3 CMOS 哈苏相机在大光比环境下可以记录更多光影信息。再结合哈苏自然色彩解决方案，直出的素材的颜色也能像人眼所见一样真实细腻。
The upgraded 166mm telecamera offers 7 times optical zoom and a wider f3.4 aperture. It provides higher resolution and can shoot 4K 60 FPS video.
Having the tele lens is truly game-changing for me because I think, especially while shooting wildlife, you want to try to capture the most authentic moments. So being able to film from a safe distance is really an amazing feature.
The third camera is a new 70mm medium tele that supports 3 times optical zoom, up to 48 megapixel resolution, and can shoot 4K 60 FPS and D-Log-M video.
The new 3 times tele lens is super helpful when you're trying to shoot in these urban environments because you can't always get super close to your subject. So it lets you just punch in and shoot from a bit farther back so you're not disturbing anyone. And it also lets you shoot with more compression. So those backgrounds look a lot bigger and more dramatic and you get more parallax through their shots.
The Cine version comes with a built-in 1TB SSD. And all 3 cameras are capable of recording in Apple ProRes for premium color fidelity. In addition to flexible pro-level imaging, Mavic 3 Pro also provides industry-leading flight performance and intelligent features. Authentic imaging has the power to convey emotion, to inspire, and to freeze moments in time. Mavic 3 Pro delivers endless ways to ignite the sparks of creativity.
So having 3 lenses built into the DJI Mavic 3 Pro allows me to get different angles and different shots that I didn't really think were possible before.
From the image quality to the insane variety of shots that you can get, this drone really is a dream for visual storytellers.
有了 Mavic 3 Pro， 我可以灵活使用3个焦段，尝试不同的构图，极大地提升了风光摄影的创作效率。
With its innovative triple camera system, Mavic 3 Pro ushers in a new era of imaging and storytelling possibilities, allowing you to keep inspiration in focus.
So I just wanted to put this video in. So I actually shot this video with the Avatar that I showed earlier, DJI product. And I want to show you just how this little thing can literally go through the woods and get up close and personal. And you'll see a couple drone videos here that I shot with my own drones, which are made by the same company. And imagine these things running on a pre-programmed navigation system where they can launch tons of these at the same time, all to follow certain waypoints and everything like this. So this is how close. You'll see my poor little dog who hates the drones barking out the window. I wasn't there to harass him. I just happened to catch him in the video. But I wanted to put these on here to show that you're not just seeing from the DJI advertisements, any embellishments. These things work this well, and it's amazing technology. So here we go. Sorry. This little thing here is what I shot this video with. You put on your goggles, but what you're seeing in the war in Ukraine is important. And the Ukrainians are using them and the Russians are using them. But these little things here, if you launch a bunch of these, we're talking like even 100 of these, and they're, just laced with some silly putty that is the same density as like C4. So you lace them with C4 in the pliable form, and they have, 10-minute chargers on them, and they all hit the target at the same time. They're going to cause some significant damage. So keep watching.
But because it's so dark, you do lose a lot of depth perception.
Uh-huh. Whoa. Woo! So high. So now it's heading what direction?
We're going to go towards a trail.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the bears are, and you can see here where it is.
Okay. So we're looking there now. That is so cool. So that's what the drone sees, right?
And for this case, when you're looking through trees, I always say, you can point the camera straight down. There's a knob here, which allows me to control the camera up and down. And so there's our mountains. And we're just going to go along the rail trail towards
oh my God,
where we know the bear is, or
so
where
cool.
I think they are. Trees, but because it's so dark, you do lose a lot of depth perception.
Whoa.
A power plant across the road. The father of two has lived and worked here in Hengchun town in Taiwan's south for more than half his life. But these are some of the final deliveries before the plant is switched off. And with that, the country's nuclear power. Chen thinks that's a bad decision.
那个煤发电应该是没有比那个核能发电还要来得好。我觉得还是核能发电需要继续延役，应该是对百姓比较好，还有对工业也 OK 啦。因为你如果核能没有发电的话，应该电价会涨。
Despite growing unease amongst some about turning off nuclear power, Taiwan's ruling party is pressing ahead with its long-time goal of a nuclear-free homeland. It's been increasing wind and solar sources and reducing coal-fired power in favor of...
Okay, so I just want to say on this point here, the reason this is in, we didn't get to cover this topic tonight, but Brandon sent me this article that he wrote. I'll put it in the description tomorrow. Taiwan, for some silly reason, has gone off nuclear and is favoring green energy. It's been my experience that every country that makes a switch becomes susceptible to Chinese infiltration, subversion, and all-out attack. So that's why this is here. We'll keep going.
Natural gas. Once seen as a cheap and stable way of helping Taiwan industrialize, nuclear power fell out of public favor because of safety fears, particularly after the 2011 Fukushima disaster in Japan, and the problem of where to store nuclear waste. Since 2017, the operating licenses of all Taiwan's reactors have expired. Taiwan's third nuclear power plant opened here on the southern coast in the mid-1980s, when nuclear power accounted for around 50% of the country's electricity. That's now down to 3%, all produced here, the last of Taiwan's 6 reactors to shut down. Taiwan already imports virtually all its energy. That's led to fears about the country's energy supply in the event of a blockade by China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan.
如果发生了什么问题，也只有2个礼拜的储存的时间，风力更不用说了，就是都不是属于稳定的电源。现在最稳定的电源就是核三嘛。
Businesses already worry about a power crunch after several mass blackouts. In a last-ditch effort to keep nuclear power, Taiwan's opposition-controlled legislature amended the law, allowing plant operators to apply to run for another 20 years. That's come too late to keep this reactor running, and the government says it would take at least a year and a half to restart it. But President Lai Ching-de's Democratic Progressive Party is not ruling out bringing nuclear back sometime in the future.
任何的政策变更都必须满足核安、核废、社会公识3个重要的前提，才有可能进行。
Reaching public and political consensus will be no easy task. At least for now, Taiwan has to adapt to a future with no nuclear power and the uncertainty that brings. Devon Tsai and Louise Watt for Taiwan Plus.
Ukrainian engineers designed a clever drone launching system disguised as ordinary wooden cabins mounted on the backs of cargo trucks. These mobile containers looked like simple rural sheds, but inside they held reinforced structures, hidden launch platforms, battery charging stations, and remote-controlled roof mechanisms. The design allowed for drones to be launched either vertically or at an angle, depending on their type, while built-in signal shielding helped them avoid early detection by Russian surveillance. Once these mobile silos were ready, Ukrainian intelligence operatives, possibly with help from local sympathizers, moved them deep into Russian territory. The trucks were quietly driven to pre-selected sites near key airbases, parked in places like forests, farms, or industrial areas where they blended into the landscape. They remain dormant for days or even weeks, with drones preloaded, charged, and waiting for the command to strike. When the time came, encrypted activation signals were sent remotely. The roofs of the containers slid open and the drones lifted off, some vertically, others using ramps or compressed air launch systems for a silent start. Because the launch sites were positioned just a few kilometers around 2 miles from their targets, the drones were able to reach their objectives quickly, leaving little time for Russian defenses to react. Operators guided them in real time using live video feeds, steering the drones with precision toward parked aircraft, fuel depots, and radar installations. Many of the drones carried high explosive or shape-charged warheads designed to pierce aircraft fuselages or ignite fuel stores. Some exploded on impact, while others used delayed fuses to cause maximum damage after reaching their targets. The operation was more than just a tactical win. It highlighted the growing sophistication of drone warfare and Ukraine's ability to strike deep inside Russian territory. In total, 117 drones were launched in a highly coordinated attack that hit at least 5 major air bases. Among the targets were strategic bombers, including aircraft Russia no longer manufactures, making their loss even more significant. These are the area where Ukraine struck 34% of Russia's strategic bomber fleet. Ukraine targeted strategic nuclear bombers at the Belaya Air Base in Siberia. Other key military installations also came under attack, including the Ivanovo Air Base northeast of Moscow and the Dyagilevo Air Base south of the capital. A massive explosion rocked the Arctic city of Severomorsk, home to Russia's largest fleet of nuclear submarines. Ukraine also struck the Olenya Guba naval base in the Murmansk region. Reaching as far as Siberia, the operation inflicted serious damage, reportedly destroying or disabling a significant portion of Russia's strategic bomber fleet. The strike marked a turning point, not only in the conflict itself, but in the evolution of drone warfare on the modern battlefield. Among the high-priority targets were the Tu-95 and Tu-22 strategic bombers, aircraft frequently used by Russia to launch cruise missile attacks deep into Ukrainian territory. The A-50 airborne early warning and control aircraft, vital for coordinating Russian air operations and detecting incoming threats, were also targeted. According to Ukrainian sources, the impact of the strike was substantial. More than 40 aircraft were reportedly hit. While some were completely destroyed in the explosions, others suffered significant damage, rendering them inoperable for extended periods. There are reports suggesting that Ukraine may have been using fiber optic control systems, which are immune to electronic warfare jamming. At the front of the drone is a camera with an RPG warhead positioned just below it. The warhead is flanked by 2 batteries located here and 4 propellers. However, the drone has a downside. The added weight with the fiber optic reduces its flight time to just 15 to 20 minutes, and its range is limited to only 1 mile or less. This, when compared to a standard drone without fiber optic, it travels more than 5 miles, which translates to around 10 kilometers. To understand how Ukraine launched these FPV drones, let's take a look at how they are made. First, we have the carbon fiber frame, which provides a lightweight yet strong structure. The frame is designed to withstand the stresses of high-speed flight and collisions. Next, you'll notice the 4 propellers, each connected to its corresponding motor. These propellers are strategically designed with opposite angles to ensure smooth and balanced flight. This counter-rotation helps the drone maintain stability and agility during flight. All of this advanced technology requires a central processor, or what can be considered the brain of the drone. This role is played by the thin motherboard placed here. As you can see, these are not covered, which helps in reducing weight.
Far beyond. It's a so-called wonder weapon, an unjammable drone controlled by a fiber optic cable that electronic warfare defenses simply cannot stop. And here we see proof of that. Hit after hit after hit. The white triangles on the Ukrainian vehicles suggest they were taking part in the Kursk operation inside Russia. During the collapse of the Kursk salient and retreat back across the border, Ukrainian forces were indeed harried by these weapons. but they're now being deployed in several other sectors of this existential war. Ukrainian soldiers we've spoken to who've been in sectors where the Russians are using these have said, fatalistically, if they see you, if they target you, that's it. There's nothing you can do to stop them. No jamming, no electronic warfare, you just got to hope for the best. What you're watching is the aftermath of an attack by a new weapon that since last autumn has brought a different kind of fear to the Donbass battlefield. A Ukrainian army jeep has been hit and set ablaze. 2 of the crew are already dead, 4 wounded. The survivors are being evacuated in a second vehicle, which is also coming under fire. The rescue vehicle is equipped with an electronic warfare array to jam conventional FPV kamikaze drones. But in this scenario, it can provide no defense. Because the weapon that destroyed the first jeep was a fiber optic drone. This is Sergeant Runa, one of Ukraine's most celebrated female combat soldiers. She shot the footage you've just seen.
Так, тому що ніякий реп не бере ці дрони на оптоволокні, тобто ти його нічим не заглушиш і від цього ніяк не спасешся. Тобто якщо вже оптоволокно працює, то там наверняка.
This is the new weapon that is changing the battlefield in Ukraine. This is a fiber optic kamikaze drone. In this film we look at the rising threat of the fiber optic drone, which the Russians have been using here on the Donbass front line for several months now. This is why they're so feared. We're given exclusive access to one of the first Ukrainian units to deploy the game-changing weapon. We also journey to the crucial Kharkiv pocket to visit a battle-scarred and under-pressure Marine battalion. They've also been targeted by Russian fiber-optic FPVs. We meet the young Marine surgeon who carried out 184 amputations in just 2 months. And we learn why stray animals can be deadly on a modern battlefield. This is what we saw. Over the last 18 months, the frontline team has witnessed drone warfare's deadly technology race. From the use of high-street Mavics as reconnaissance machines, to their adaptation as bombers, and the advent of the kamikaze FPVs, which changed the war again. Each advance in one side's drone capability is usually countered by an improvement in the other's electronic warfare defenses. That is, the defender will try to find a means to jam the radio signals with which an attacking drone pilot controls their machine. Here's a Russian radio-controlled kamikaze FPV drone that was recently jammed and taken down by our old friend Lieutenant Oleg's unit. But what if a drone could be piloted some other way? One that would prevent enemy interference, that would make it unjammable. So that like the pursuing creature in your nightmare, like the shark in Jaws, there is just no escape. A drone workshop behind the Donbass front. It's the usual organized chaos of bomb-making equipment and spare parts. That's how the war works here. But what we've really come here to see is the new type of unjammable drone that everybody's been talking about. We've seen for maybe a year and a half now the effect, the impact of kamikaze FPV drones. But those drones are vulnerable to electronic warfare, to jamming. This, which is being seen in increasing numbers on the battlefield, the Russians in particular use them in large numbers, is a drone that is controlled by fiber optic cable. Spool here underneath might have up to 10 kilometers or more of the cable, and it's through the cable that the drone pilot is controlling it. It is unjammable in that sense, and they're causing a lot of concern, particularly on the Ukrainian side of the front line. As you can see, the Ukrainians have them as well. I say this particular one has an RPG warhead on top. The whole rig might cost somewhere around $1,000, $1,500, and of course, like its less sophisticated radio-controlled FPV brethren, it can disable or even take out a main battle tank, which costs maybe $4 million. First, briefly, let's outline the technology that makes the fiber optic drone a nightmare for the soldiers on both sides. A fiber optic cable transmits data using light pulses through a thin strand of glass or plastic. This allows high-speed data transmission over long distances with high bandwidth and minimal signal loss. Now have a look at this. This is the fiber optic cable which controls these kamikaze drones. Almost gossamer thin. It's very much like a fishing line. It can't be broken by pulling it, but it can be snapped like that because it contains glass, which the signals travel along. like tooth floss. But it makes for a deadly weapon. Unlike an ordinary FPV, the pilot always has a physical connection with the fiber optic drone. Basically, it's like flying a kite, a deadly kite, with 10 kilometers of string attached. A Ukrainian military source told Frontline that drones with 20 kilometers of cable are being tested. 40 kilometers might even be possible. This is Fast, a fiber optic drone pilot from the 24th Brigade, which has been firefighting Russian advances along various frontline sectors. I ask him how the new drone works.
Досить просте. Ми використовуємо стандартний дрон FPV, знімаємо з нього всі передатчики інформації, там, відео і управління, і підключаємо його через платку прямо до польотника. Ця платка конвертує управління і відео в оптичний сигнал, і по оптичному проводу 10 кілометрів в цьому варіанті передає до пульта управління і відео екрану.
Can you tell us the advantages that the fiber optic drone has over a normal FPV?
Переваги оптоволокна – це стабільна картинка, відео зображення стабільне і нема проблем з управлінням. Тобто відпадають проблеми радіогоризонту, подавлення РЕП, яке зараз дуже сильно і потужно розвивається. В нього також є свої недоліки, але саме оптика дозволяє обходити РЕП. І там, де звичайні дрони не справляються, допомагає оптика. Наприклад, звичайні дрони, вони не можуть дуже низько опуститися через те, що радіохвиля не огибає гори, будинки. За допомогою саме оптики воно може летіти на мінімальній висоті, вже не зважаючи на рельєф місцевості.
Which means, for example, that a fiber optic drone can lie in wait on the ground by a road, in ambush, rather than have to loiter aloft, where it's vulnerable to air defense. Could you tell us a little bit about the sort of targets you would fly a drone like this against, and under what circumstances would you use it?
Надія його розміром катушки оптики. Ми його використовуємо, коли йде вже масивні атаки з залученням потужних ребів, коли вже стандартні звичайні дрони не можуть через протидію долетіти до цілі. Також в складних
You can sell this $5 spatula on Amazon and compete with hundreds of other spatula sellers, or you can sell digital products on Amazon and compete with almost no one. You see,
рельєфних місцевостях, там, де горизонт не дозволяє залетіти звичайному дрону до цілі. Більше ж його використовуємо як останню ланку оборони, щоб ворог не доходив до піхоти. Тобто знищуючи техніку до того, як вона прибуде до захисників. З повагою, тому що, кажу, на нього не діють реби, які в нас вже теж є в досить великій кількості, і його практично неможливо заглушити.
Do you think these fiber optic drones will eventually completely replace the radio-controlled FPVs?
Ні. Як вже доказує практика, в кожного є своя ніша використання. Тобто поцепити на нього величезну дальності, середньої дистанції звичайної FPV плюс 15, 20, а то і 30 кілометрів. Не буває якось такої вундервафлі, яка зробить революцію. Знайдуть протидію і ним.
And this could, but with the ammo, it could destroy a tank that might be worth $4 million.
Може, але все одно. Не треба думати, що з першого попитку знищить танк. Танк має захист, і щоб пробити його динамічний захист, треба використовувати тандемні боєприпаси, які важко вцепити на звичайний дрон через їхні габарити. Тому ми використовуємо 2-3 дрона, щоб вразити один танк.
It's not going to fire this thing, is it? Let's watch a fiber optic drone take off. I'm told it has to be flown smoothly, no jerky changes of direction. again like a kite. One Ukrainian infantryman suggested to me that the best way to escape was to take cover in forest or thick undergrowth, in which the fibre optic cable might get snagged. That was a hopeful guess, rather than a proven fact. A Donbass winter's morning, just as dawn is breaking, we set off to reach a frontline unit which has been targeted by these new drones. As the Russians push forward, getting from A to B in Donetsk Oblast gets ever more difficult. To get to the Kharkiv pocket from Kramatorsk while avoiding the Pokrov's Russian kamikaze drone zone, you have to perform a big detour west and south via Dobrobilya. We're not the only traffic taking this route. A Leopard tank is also on the way to the Kharkiv front. The early morning light is beautiful, the situation less so. Our destination is the 37th Separate Marine Brigade. Few units have had a tougher war. Most recently they fought in Touretsk. This is from the highlights reel of their drone operators from that front line. Their cavalry was the unsuccessful Ukrainian effort last year to force a bridgehead on the eastern bank of the Dnieper, around the village of Krinky. In late 2023, the Marine Corps conducted amphibious assault landings from the western shore and took Krinky, hoping to drive further inland. That proved impossible. The Ukrainians had to abandon their tiny bridgehead in July last year, after months of close-quarter fighting against enormous odds. On a battlefield measuring 1 kilometer deep by 110 meters wide, the Krinky operation officially cost the Corps 260 dead, with a further 800 missing, presumed killed, according to report. In other words, 1,000 men were lost for a single village that could not be held, an expensive diversion at best, a bloody disaster otherwise. Last October, the 37th were transferred to the Kharkiv front to help try to block the Russian advance, which has since overrun Kharkiv itself, and now aims to envelop the crucial logistics hub of Pokrovsk to the north. Our first stop was to have been the Marines' main casualty stabilization point. A stabilization point is a casualty station just behind the front line, where wounded servicemen are first given medical aid by qualified doctors rather than combat medics, in order to keep them alive until they reach a hospital. But the Russian artillery had got there first. 2 near misses took off the casualty station's roof, destroyed equipment inside and out, and left the medical staff in shock. This is the 2nd Battalion's chief medic.
Yesterday we have a big damage our stabilization point. It was destroyed by artillery of our enemy. Our people safe, but we have a big loss in our medical equipment, medicines. And also 2 ambulances was destroyed.
Oh, so has this happened to you before?
Yes, of course, but we tried to change location every 2 or 3 weeks. Because in this area it's very difficult to be safe. And also we have to be nearby the front line, and that's why we almost all the time we change location.
We meet at the battalion's only surviving stabilization point, which turns out to be a shipping container converted into a 1-bedroom emergency room, under camo netting beside an abandoned cottage.
All right, guys, so I'm going to end it right there. Make sure I'm not muted. So you get the idea. We have to be so careful. We have to spot these things. We have to spot the semi-trailer truck. And look, I would say, don't worry about getting in trouble. Worry about safety first. If there's a drone hovering around your property and it doesn't go away, if one flies over, of course, let it go. A lot of people have drones. But I intercepted 3 drones last week who just kept going once, twice, 3 times over my property. So I sent my own drones up to chase them off. And I don't know if it did the trick. They were gone by the time I got there. But the point is, suspend your own grip on reality. If you watch everything you've just seen right here, the future's here now, and the future is deadly. This is like a Black Mirror episode, but it's happening right now, every day in Ukraine. And what I really want you to take away from this is that the Ukrainian engineer, whatever he was, he looks like a dude that, like, you'd see in a bar in Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine many times. He's not some specialist. He's a guy that figured out, hey, if we take a zip tie and put a mortar round on a goddamn Mavic and we can tweak the timer, we could turn this into a deadly weapon. It's that easy. So how long is it until some of these container ships from China, our worst enemy, or any other country, decide to launch these attacks on us, or drive a platform of drones into the country via semi-trailer truck? Because we know ZPMC from the Chinese Communist Party is the crane that controls which containers go where. Be vigilant. If it looks wrong, it is wrong. I don't want to say see something, say something. Protect yourselves, protect your family, protect your house, protect your community in that order. Don't wait for the cavalry. So to be continued. We'll get back to this. It's late, but I'm glad I could speak to you again. I think this is, and from Steve Bannon, who I greatly respect, he's a friend. This is going to be a hell of a year. So be vigilant, be healthy, and be ready. This has been Investigate Everything with Brian O'Shea. Have a great night.